Hello there, and welcome to The Tired Thinker, a quiet corner where busy minds can slow down and big ideas take their time. Tonight's gentle exploration drifts into something subtle, powerful, and often unseen: the hidden patterns of the human mind. These are the little forces that guide choices, shape feelings, and color the way we see the world. You won't always notice them at work, but they're there, in every conversation, every decision, and every moment of connection. Before we wander through these psychological secrets, I'd love to know, where are you listening from? And what time is it right now in your small corner of this wide and restless world? It's curious, isn't it? A video about the mind, and here we are, scattered across so many places, quietly thinking together. If this kind of slow reflection brings you calm, or if you just need a soft space to rest after a long day, a gentle like or a quiet subscribe would mean a lot. It helps this little channel find others who might need a pause too. Now, let's begin. A quiet lake at sunrise sets the stage for a timeless memory. The water is still, the air cool, and the world seems to hold its breath. Years later, the exact details of the day blur. The conversations, the small mishaps, even the outcome of the fishing trip. What remains sharp and unshakable is the feeling of calm, safety, and belonging shared in that moment. This happens because people don't hold on to every word spoken or action taken. Emotions, however, take root and stay. They are the invisible threads connecting one person to another, shaping memories long after events fade. Consider a simple restaurant visit. A server might bring the wrong dish to the table. If they approach with steady eye contact and a calm, respectful tone, the experience turns positive despite the mistake. The specific words of the apology won't matter later. What will linger is the sense of being valued and respected. If, instead, the server appears rushed or indifferent, even a corrected order leaves behind a sour taste. Workplaces reflect this same truth every day. Picture two managers delivering feedback. One lists errors in a detached, cold manner. The other points out the same issues but adds genuine encouragement and belief in the team's ability to improve. The actual advice might be identical, yet the emotional impact differs entirely. Over time, this difference determines trust, morale, and performance. Friendships and personal relationships follow the same pattern. A friend struggling through a difficult time might not remember the advice offered word for word. What will remain is the comfort of presence and support. Sometimes sitting silently beside someone in grief matters more than any carefully crafted sentence. A story often told captures this perfectly. A student struggling at home and in school was on the verge of giving up. A teacher, noticing the effort behind the struggle, took a moment to express belief in the student's potential. Years later, the exact conversation was forgotten, but the feeling of being seen and valued stayed. That moment of encouragement became a turning point, proving how lasting emotional connections can be. In modern life, constant streams of communication blur together: emails, texts, posts, and meetings. Words pile up and fade quickly. What remains are the emotions attached to those interactions. A single careless comment can sting for years, even when the exact phrasing is forgotten. Likewise, a small act of kindness or respect can become a treasured memory. This is why attention to tone, body language, and presence matters. Consider two coworkers. One asks for help, and the other replies, "Sure, I can help." The words are positive, yet if spoken with a sigh, arms crossed, and eyes darting toward the clock, the message feels heavy with reluctance. The person asking for help walks away feeling like a burden. Identical words, opposite emotional outcomes. Creating positive emotional experiences does not require forced cheerfulness or fake enthusiasm. It comes from being genuine and focused. Putting away distractions during a conversation signals care. Speaking calmly during disagreements shows respect. These subtle actions build trust over time, forming the foundation of strong connections. Even leaders in challenging situations shape outcomes through emotional tone. After a difficult quarter, one leader may focus only on numbers and failures, leaving employees anxious or discouraged. Another leader can acknowledge challenges while expressing steady confidence in the team's ability to improve. The second approach fosters hope and resilience, proving that feelings influence results as much as strategy or data. Small, everyday interactions carry weight as well. A brief smile exchanged with a stranger on a crowded street can brighten their mood for hours. That smile may be forgotten by the person who gave it, but it remains vivid for the one who received it. Over time, these emotional moments accumulate. A child raised in a stable, supportive environment carries that foundation into adulthood. They might not recall individual lectures or house rules, but the sense of safety and respect becomes part of their identity. Memories of pivotal moments often center on emotions. A mentor's belief, a teacher's encouragement, a stranger's unexpected kindness. These are remembered not for the exact words spoken, but for the feelings they stirred. Such memories shape decisions, relationships, and self-worth. Every interaction leaves a trace. Words, gestures, and silences create an emotional imprint that endures. Being aware of this influence shifts how people communicate. Instead of rushing through conversations, there is value in pausing to listen fully. Instead of snapping in frustration, speaking with clarity and calm can turn a tense moment into an opportunity for connection. Over time, relationships become defined not by the specifics of what was said or done, but by the steady accumulation of feelings created. Long after events fade, people carry with them the warmth of being understood, the strength of being supported, and the dignity of being respected. These are the memories that last. A crowded lobby hums with quiet conversation as a job candidate steps through the door. Before a single question is asked, eyes turn to take in every detail. The way the candidate stands, the slight set of their shoulders, the expression on their face, all of it speaks louder than words. In those first 7 seconds, an unspoken story begins to form. By the time they sit down, the people in the room already feel they know something about this person, whether or not it's true. This is the power of first impressions. They happen fast, almost instantly, and they stick. Once formed, they are difficult to undo. People don't just see clothing or hear words. They sense attitude, confidence, and intent. These impressions are like wet cement at the start, soft and ready to take shape. After a short moment, they harden, becoming the foundation of how someone is seen and treated. Consider a networking event where two professionals meet for the first time. One walks in with steady posture, a slight but genuine smile, and a clear greeting. The other shuffles in with eyes down, a limp handshake, and rushed words. Neither has shared a single piece of actual information about their skills or experience. Yet everyone watching has already decided which person seems reliable, confident, and worth speaking to. Those early judgments will guide how conversations unfold for the rest of the evening. A similar thing happens outside the workplace. Imagine a new neighbor moving into a quiet street. The first time they meet others, they appear friendly and open, making brief but warm eye contact. That single encounter plants the seed for future interactions. If instead, they seem distracted or closed off, the people around them may quietly label them as unfriendly. Even if later efforts are made to connect, the original impression creates a barrier that is hard to overcome. These snap judgments are part of human nature. The brain looks for patterns and makes quick decisions to keep up with a fast-moving world. In the past, this skill helped humans identify threats and allies in an instant. Today, it still operates beneath the surface, influencing how people are treated in business meetings, social events, and everyday exchanges. Picture a team meeting where a new project leader is introduced. The leader speaks clearly, makes eye contact, and listens attentively when others talk. Within minutes, team members feel a sense of trust forming. Even if challenges arise later, that early impression of competence will color how the team reacts. If the leader had fumbled through introductions, with nervous gestures and scattered thoughts, doubts would linger long after the first day. First impressions don't rely only on words. Clothing, tone of voice, pace of speech, and even silence play roles. A clean, well-fitted outfit signals preparation. A firm but not crushing handshake communicates confidence. Speaking at a steady pace shows thoughtfulness and control. These signals combine to form an unspoken message: I am someone you can trust. When these signals clash, such as strong words paired with hesitant body language, confusion and mistrust take root instead. In a hiring scenario, the interviewer begins forming opinions before a single question is answered. The way a candidate enters the room, sits down, and engages with the first greeting shapes the rest of the conversation. Even when later answers are thoughtful and precise, they must work against the initial picture painted in those first few seconds. A strong beginning makes everything smoother. A weak one requires extra effort to repair, and often the damage cannot be fully erased. First impressions extend to digital spaces as well. A hastily written email filled with errors, or a video call where someone appears distracted or poorly prepared, creates the same kind of lasting image. Technology does not erase human instincts. It simply moves them to a new setting. A professional who answers a call with direct eye contact and a calm, steady tone builds immediate credibility, even through a screen. This effect also shows up in customer experiences. Imagine walking into a store for the first time. The first employee seen sets the tone. A welcoming look and a few clear words of greeting create comfort and ease. A blank stare or curt remark creates tension that lingers throughout the visit. Even if another employee later offers great service, that initial feeling shadows the entire interaction. Reversing a bad first impression is possible but difficult. It requires consistent, deliberate actions over time. Think of it like a smudge on glass. The longer it sits, the harder it becomes to clean. People tend to notice behavior that confirms what they already believe. If someone is seen as untrustworthy at first, every small slip will be noticed, while positive actions might be dismissed as luck or manipulation. For example, a new hire arrives late on their first day without explanation. The manager immediately forms an opinion about reliability. Even after months of punctuality, a single late arrival later on will stand out more sharply because it fits the original narrative. This is why those first 7 seconds are so critical. They frame all future interactions. The stakes are especially high in situations involving leadership. A coach addressing a team for the first time has only moments to set the tone. A strong, steady presence encourages players to listen and follow. A shaky, uncertain start plants seeds of doubt that can grow into resistance. Once doubt takes root, even excellent strategies can fail because trust never fully forms. In negotiations, first impressions shape the balance of power. A negotiator who appears calm and prepared gains an immediate advantage. Their counterpart assumes competence before a single proposal is made. If they appear flustered or unready, the other side senses weakness and acts accordingly. This dynamic unfolds silently but decisively, often determining outcomes before details are discussed. Small choices often make the difference. Taking a deep breath before entering a room can steady posture and voice. Pausing briefly before speaking can project control. Making deliberate eye contact signals presence and focus. These actions require little effort, but carry enormous weight in those first crucial seconds. The idea that first impressions last so long might seem unfair, yet it reflects how humans process information. Quick judgments help people navigate complex social worlds. They conserve mental energy by creating a shortcut. Once someone is labeled as confident or uncertain, friendly or distant, the brain stops reevaluating constantly. This shortcut saves time, but makes it difficult to rewrite that early story. Over and over, these initial moments shape relationships, careers, and reputations. Whether at a job interview, a first meeting with neighbors, a leadership introduction, or a negotiation table, the first 7 seconds act as the foundation for everything that follows. The way a person appears, through body language, tone, and presence, sets a tone that can open doors or close them before words even begin to matter. A young athlete stands on the court after a flawless game. The crowd cheers, teammates surround him, and even the coach looks impressed. Later that week, a teacher sees him in class struggling with an assignment. Instead of noticing the struggle, the teacher assumes he will figure it out because he's so talented on the court. This belief is not based on facts about his academic skills. It comes from a mental shortcut called the halo effect. The halo effect happens when one strong trait overshadows everything else. When people see excellence in one area, they begin to believe that the same person must be capable in other areas too, even when there's no evidence. It works in the opposite direction as well. If someone makes a poor first impression, others might assume they are unskilled across the board, even if that's not true. Picture a company hiring a new manager. During the interview, the candidate delivers a confident presentation. They dress well, speak clearly, and handle questions with ease. The panel walks away convinced this person will be great at leading teams, organizing projects, and handling conflict. None of those skills were directly tested. The impression of confidence created a halo that made everything else seem certain. Weeks later, if problems arise, the same panel might overlook them at first because they are still under the influence of that initial glow. The halo effect shows up in daily life in subtle ways. A well-dressed stranger in a store may be assumed to be kind, honest, and knowledgeable, even though nothing is truly known about them. A student who speaks up once with a brilliant answer might be seen as hardworking and intelligent in every subject, even if their actual performance varies. This is how the mind fills in gaps. One shining example becomes the standard for everything else. In marketing, the halo effect drives many decisions. A popular brand releases a new product, and people rush to buy it without research. Their trust in the brand's past success spills over, creating belief in the quality of this new item. The product could be untested, but the reputation built elsewhere influences judgment. This same process happens with people. A respected employee praised for their technical skills might suddenly be seen as a strong leader, even if they've never managed anyone before. Imagine a workplace where a senior engineer solves a tough problem during a meeting. Colleagues are impressed and begin to rely on them for decisions outside of engineering, like budgeting or hiring. Over time, their voice carries weight in areas far beyond their expertise. If the engineer's suggestions work out, the halo effect grows stronger. If mistakes happen, they may still receive the benefit of the doubt because everyone remembers the brilliance of that one moment. The reverse can happen too, known as the horn effect. A single negative trait can overshadow everything else. If a new team member stumbles on their first assignment, others might assume they are careless or unreliable in every area. Even when their later work improves, the shadow of that first mistake lingers. It becomes difficult to break free from the label created in those early days. The halo effect is especially powerful in leadership. Consider a CEO who speaks well in public. Their charisma creates the image of competence, and investors, employees, and customers may believe the company is thriving simply because the leader appears confident. Behind the scenes, the company might face serious problems, but the glow of the CEO's image keeps doubts at bay. When reality finally comes to light, the shock feels greater because it clashes with the picture painted by the halo. Teachers often see this phenomenon with students. A child who behaves well in class and turns in neat assignments might be assumed to understand material better than they actually do. Another child, more restless or messy, might be underestimated even when they grasp concepts fully. In both cases, perception shapes treatment. The halo effect influences grading, recommendations, and even future opportunities. This bias plays a role in hiring and promotions too. A candidate who delivers a strong opening handshake and maintains confident eye contact might be rated as more skilled overall. Their resume may be similar to others, but the positive traits displayed in person make their entire profile seem stronger. Once hired, they may receive more chances to prove themselves, creating a cycle where perception and reality blend. There's a well-known story about a famous actor known for playing heroic roles. Off-screen, the actor's behavior was difficult and unreliable, yet fans continued to see them as noble and trustworthy because of the roles they played. The halo from their on-screen image spilled into real life. Even news reports of bad behavior didn't fully erase the public's belief, showing how deeply this bias can take hold. In group settings, the halo effect spreads quickly. A team working with a highly respected member might accept their ideas without question. The group assumes that because this person excels in one area, they must be right about everything else too. This can stifle innovation and lead to blind spots. It takes conscious effort to separate admiration for one skill from critical thinking about unrelated issues. Consider a courtroom. A witness who appears calm and well-spoken may seem more trustworthy to a jury. Their appearance and demeanor create an aura of credibility. Another witness with a nervous manner might be doubted, even if their facts are accurate. The halo effect can influence decisions with serious consequences, proving how powerful it is beyond casual interactions. Breaking free from this bias requires awareness. When evaluating someone, it helps to slow down and separate different traits. Excelling in one area should not automatically mean strength in another. A skilled public speaker might lack organizational skills. A brilliant scientist might struggle with leadership. Recognizing this prevents misplaced trust and helps decisions rest on evidence rather than assumptions. At its core, the halo effect reflects a deep human desire for simplicity. The world feels easier to navigate when people can be sorted quickly into categories like competent or incompetent. Instead of weighing each action separately, the mind takes shortcuts. These shortcuts save time, but also create blind spots. Once a halo forms, it colors every interaction, shaping relationships and decisions in ways that often go unnoticed. In daily life, this can mean a single moment of excellence opens doors far beyond its original context. A strong presentation, a well-executed task, or a confident introduction can create a glow that influences how others see every action that follows. Over time, that glow becomes part of a person's reputation, often lasting longer than the moment that sparked it. In a small office, two coworkers prepare for a team presentation. One of them, calm and steady, reviews notes and organizes slides. The other, visibly tense, scans the room and critiques every detail. "Your section is too long," they snap. "You really don't seem ready for this." The criticism feels personal and sharp, far beyond what the situation calls for. Later, it becomes clear that the one giving harsh feedback was the most nervous about their own part of the presentation. Their words weren't only about the slides or preparation. They were a reflection of their own fear of failure. This is projection in action. People often push their insecurities onto others, especially when they feel vulnerable. It's a defense mechanism. Instead of facing their own flaws or fears, they point to someone else and call it out there. It happens quickly and often without conscious thought. In families, this pattern can last for years. A parent who once struggled with school might criticize their child for not studying hard enough. On the surface, it looks like concern for the child's future. Beneath it, there's an old fear of failure being stirred up. When the parent sees the child face challenges, it reminds them of their own past struggles. Rather than sit with that discomfort, they project it outward through criticism. Workplaces are full of similar dynamics. Picture a manager who constantly tells their team to communicate better. They send long, detailed messages about the importance of clear updates. Yet, this same manager often fails to share key information on time. Their complaint about poor communication is really a reflection of their own weakness. It's easier to focus on others than to face the reality of their own role in the problem. Projection often shows up in social circles. Imagine a group of friends discussing someone who is late to a gathering. One friend reacts strongly, saying, "They're so disrespectful. They never care about anyone's time." Later, it turns out that this same friend is often late themselves, but feels guilty about it. By criticizing someone else harshly, they try to distance themselves from their own flaw. This behavior can cause confusion because the words being spoken don't always match reality. The person receiving the criticism might start questioning themselves, even when the attack isn't truly about them. A talented employee may hear constant remarks about being unfocused from a coworker who secretly feels insecure about their own lack of concentration. Over time, the talented employee might begin to doubt their abilities, even though the original problem was never theirs. Projection can spread through entire teams or groups. If a leader carries deep insecurity about being seen as weak, they might accuse others of lacking strength or commitment. This creates an environment where everyone feels defensive. People start protecting themselves instead of working together. The leader's fear becomes the team's fear, and progress slows. Romantic relationships often reveal the clearest examples. A partner who is jealous might accuse the other of being unfaithful without evidence. This accusation usually reflects the jealous partner's own thoughts or temptations. By projecting their inner struggle outward, they avoid confronting it directly. These accusations can damage trust, even when unfounded, because the words cut deep and plant seeds of doubt. The effect of projection can be long-lasting. Children who grow up hearing constant criticism may internalize those messages, even when the criticism was never truly about them. A parent who felt insecure about their own career might tell a child they'll never make it in a chosen field. The child carries that voice into adulthood, mistaking someone else's fear for their own limitation. There's a story about a young artist who faced relentless criticism from a teacher. The teacher said the artist's work lacked originality and vision. Years later, it became clear that the teacher had given up on their own dreams of creating art. Every harsh word spoken to the student was a reflection of the teacher's regret and self-doubt. The student almost quit, believing the criticism was accurate, when in truth, it was never about them. Projection isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it appears in small, subtle ways. A coworker might make a joke about someone being bad at math when they themselves feel insecure about numbers. A friend might roll their eyes at another's outfit because they feel uncertain about their own style. These little comments seem harmless, but over time, they reveal deep patterns of hidden fear. Understanding projection helps in responding to it. When criticism feels strangely intense or personal, it can help to pause and ask, "Is this really about me?" Often, the answer is no. Recognizing that someone else's words are rooted in their own struggles creates space to stay calm. It prevents unnecessary arguments and protects self-esteem. Consider a scenario where a team member constantly accuses others of being unprepared. Instead of reacting with anger, another teammate might observe the pattern and realize the accuser is often the one scrambling at the last minute. By seeing the projection clearly, they avoid getting caught up in the drama. They focus on their own work and let the misplaced criticism pass. Projection can also show up during conflicts. A partner might shout, "You never listen to me," during an argument, even though they are the one who often tunes out during conversations. The accusation feels true to them because it's easier to see a flaw in someone else than in the mirror. When both sides project, conflicts escalate quickly. Each person fights a reflection of themselves instead of addressing the real issue. Social media magnifies projection. Someone who feels insecure about their appearance might post harsh comments on others' photos. A person unhappy with their career might criticize strangers online for being lazy or unmotivated. Behind the screen, projection spreads easily because there's little accountability. The target of the comment feels the sting, while the person projecting avoids facing their own pain. In leadership, projection can damage entire organizations. A boss who fears losing control might accuse employees of being disloyal. This fear leads to strict rules and constant surveillance. Over time, employees begin to feel mistrusted and pull away, confirming the boss's original fear. The cycle feeds itself, all because the leader's insecurity shaped the environment. Breaking this cycle starts with awareness. While it's difficult to change someone else's behavior, individuals can control their response. Not every harsh word deserves to be taken personally. Sometimes it's a mirror reflecting someone else's inner battle. By seeing the pattern, it becomes easier to separate real feedback from misplaced fear. This understanding also helps with self-reflection. Everyone has moments of projection. When criticism comes out sharply, it's worth asking if it's really about the other person. A manager frustrated with a team's performance might pause and consider whether they're upset with their own mistakes. A friend tempted to judge another's choices might reflect on their own discomfort instead. Over time, this awareness creates healthier interactions. Instead of passing insecurities around like hidden burdens, people can take responsibility for their feelings. When criticism is rooted in projection, understanding its source makes it easier to respond with clarity instead as hurt. What once felt like a personal attack becomes visible for what it truly is, a glimpse into someone else's private struggle. A crowded city street bustles with noise as a young man weaves through the crowd, handing out small flowers. Each flower is free. He smiles, places one gently in a passerby's hand, and moves on without asking for anything. At first, people seem confused. They didn't plan to take a flower. Some try to hand it back, but he refuses with a polite gesture. A few steps later, when he circles back with a small donation box, many who received a flower reach into their pockets and give money. They don't need the flower. They don't even know the man. Yet something inside pushes them to give back. This is reciprocity at work, a natural human response. When someone gives, others feel an urge to return the favor, even when they didn't ask for the gift. This instinct goes back to early human societies. Sharing food, tools, and protection helped groups survive. A person who received help felt pressure to repay it later, keeping balance within the community. Over time, this became a deeply rooted part of human behavior. Imagine two coworkers. One stays late to help the other finish a report before a deadline. The next week, when the roles are reversed, the second coworker doesn't even think twice about staying late in return. The original act created a bond. Even without words, there's a sense that favors should flow both ways. This exchange builds trust and strengthens relationships. In friendships, reciprocity often appears in small gestures. Someone buys lunch, and later the friend insists on covering the next meal. A neighbor brings over fresh baked bread, and soon a plate of cookies arrives in return. These simple exchanges go beyond the actual value of the gift. What matters is the message: I see you, I appreciate you, I want to keep this connection balanced. Salespeople and marketers understand this principle well. At a food market, a vendor offers free samples. Shoppers take a taste, enjoy it, and then feel a subtle pressure to buy something. Even if they didn't plan to make a purchase, the act of receiving creates a pull to give back. This works because humans dislike feeling indebted, even in tiny ways. The easiest way to relieve that discomfort is to reciprocate. A classic example comes from restaurants. Some servers leave a small mint with the check. This tiny gesture often increases tips, not because of the mint itself, but because the customer feels the server has done something extra. When the server smiles and adds a second mint while saying, "Just for you," tips rise even higher. The sense of personal care strengthens the obligation to respond in kind. Reciprocity can influence bigger decisions too. Consider a business negotiation. A company might open with a generous concession, such as offering a lower price or faster delivery. The other side, feeling the weight of that gesture, may respond by agreeing to terms they might have resisted otherwise. Each move sets up the next, like steps in a dance. The first gift sets the rhythm, and both sides feel compelled to keep it going. This principle is powerful, but it can also be misused. A person might give not out of genuine kindness, but to create a sense of obligation. Imagine a neighbor who constantly drops by with small gifts, always cheerful and friendly. Later, they ask for a big favor, like borrowing tools or getting help with a difficult task. Saying no feels harder because of all the earlier gestures. The gifts weren't free, they were part of a silent trade. In workplaces, this dynamic shapes relationships between employees and managers. A boss who supports a team member through a challenge earns loyalty. Later, when the boss needs extra effort, the team member feels motivated to give it. The relationship deepens through these exchanges. However, if the boss gives only to manipulate, trust erodes once the pattern becomes clear. The team member begins to feel used instead of valued. There's a story of a young lawyer at a large firm. Early in their career, a senior partner took time to mentor them, answering questions and offering guidance without expecting anything in return. Years later, when that partner needed help on a complex case, the lawyer went above and beyond to assist. The original kindness sparked a cycle of mutual support that lasted for years. Reciprocity also appears in families. A child grows up watching a parent care for them, providing meals, shelter, and love. As the parent ages, the child often feels a deep responsibility to return that care. The actions may change, but the emotional balance remains. This sense of duty can shape decisions about careers, living arrangements, and finances. In romantic relationships, reciprocity builds intimacy. One partner surprises the other with a thoughtful gesture, like planning a special evening or leaving a note of encouragement. The recipient naturally looks for ways to reciprocate. This back and forth strengthens the bond, creating a shared rhythm of giving and receiving. When reciprocity breaks down, when one person gives constantly and the other rarely returns it, resentment grows. Balance matters as much as the individual acts. Even casual interactions are shaped by this principle. Holding a door for a stranger often earns a smile or a thank you. Offering a kind word can prompt one in return. These small exchanges keep social life flowing smoothly. Without them, communities would feel colder and more divided. Consider a scenario where a new employee joins a team. On the first day, a colleague takes time to show them around, explain procedures, and introduce them to others. That small act of generosity sets the tone. Months later, when the colleague faces a tight deadline, the new employee is the first to step in and help. A single gesture at the start creates a lasting cycle of mutual support. The pull of reciprocity is so strong that it can even influence decisions made in private. A person who receives a thoughtful gift might later choose to return the kindness without being asked. They might not even consciously connect the two actions, but the feeling of balance drives their behavior. This principle plays a role in conflict resolution as well. During tense negotiations, one side might offer a small concession to show goodwill. The other side, sensing the gesture, often responds with their own concession. Step by step, the conflict softens. Each move encourages the next, creating a path toward agreement. Without that first act of giving, the cycle might never begin. The key to reciprocity lies in authenticity. When a gift or favor comes from a genuine place, the return gesture strengthens the relationship. When it comes from manipulation, the relationship weakens over time. People can sense the difference, even if it takes a while to see clearly. Everyday life is full of moments where this principle plays out quietly. A smile given on a busy street invites a smile in return. A helping hand during a difficult day often comes back later in an unexpected way. These exchanges form the invisible threads that hold communities together. Whether in families, workplaces, or among strangers, giving creates connection, and connection inspires giving back. A traveler walks through an unfamiliar city, searching for a place to eat. Two restaurants sit side by side. One is nearly empty, with only a single table occupied. The other is full, with a small line forming outside the door. Without checking menus or prices, the traveler steps into the crowded restaurant. The choice feels simple. If so many people are eating there, it must be good. This is social proof at work. When faced with uncertainty, people look to others for guidance. The behavior of the group becomes a shortcut for making decisions. Instead of carefully weighing every option, the mind says, if they are doing it, it must be the right thing. This instinct comes from a long history of survival. Early humans relied on the group to stay safe. If everyone ran in one direction, it made sense to run too, even without knowing why. Those who paused to analyze the situation risked danger. Today, the threats are different, but the instinct remains. Crowds still signal safety, approval, and value. Consider a new product launch. A company releases a phone app, and at first, only a few people download it. Then a well-known influencer posts about using the app. Followers see the post and try it themselves. The download numbers rise quickly. Soon, people who have never heard of the influencer start downloading too, simply because they notice the growing number of users. The app's popularity becomes its own form of advertisement. Reviews play a powerful role in this process. When someone shops online and sees hundreds of 5-star ratings, the decision feels easier. Even without reading every review, the sheer volume suggests reliability. A product with few reviews, even if well made, feels riskier. The crowd's opinion shapes individual choices before any direct experience happens. Social proof shows up in public spaces in subtle ways. Picture a busy street corner with a traffic light. If one person starts crossing before the light changes, others often hesitate. But if 3 or 4 people step forward together, the rest of the crowd usually follows, even if the light is still red. The group's behavior overrides individual judgment. Workplaces experience this dynamic too. In a meeting, a new idea is introduced. At first, the room is silent. Then, one respected team member speaks up in support. Immediately, others begin to agree. Some may genuinely like the idea. Others simply don't want to stand apart from the group. The decision that follows may be less about the idea itself and more about the momentum of agreement. This effect can be seen in fashion trends. A certain style might seem strange at first. Then a few people start wearing it, often influencers or celebrities. As others see it more often, it begins to feel normal, even appealing. Before long, stores can't keep the item in stock. What began as a handful of bold choices becomes a widespread movement, driven by the desire to fit in. Restaurants and bars often use this principle deliberately. Some keep a section of tables empty at the start of the evening, seating new guests close together to create the appearance of a busy space. From the street, Passers-by see the energy inside and feel drawn to join. The actual number of customers hasn't changed, but the impression of popularity triggers the same response as genuine crowds. A classic example comes from live television. Sitcoms often use laugh tracks to signal when a joke is funny. Even when viewers know the laughter is recorded, they are more likely to laugh along. Hearing others laugh, real or not, gives permission to find humor in the moment. The reaction becomes contagious. This same principle shapes politics. When voters see polls showing a clear leader, they may feel pressure to support the popular choice. No one wants to back a losing side. Campaigns highlight endorsements and crowd sizes for this reason. The image of widespread support influences undecided voters more than detailed policy explanations ever could. Social proof can also create false impressions. Imagine a line outside a new store. People passing by assume the store must be worth visiting. In reality, the line may be manufactured, with only a handful of people allowed in at a time to create the appearance of demand. The crowd itself becomes the advertisement, even when the actual experience is unremarkable. This principle plays out online in subtle ways. A post with thousands of likes appears more credible than one with only a few. Users are more likely to share it, even if they haven't checked the facts. Over time, this can spread misinformation. The volume of engagement becomes a stand-in for truth. In classrooms, social proof influences learning. If a teacher asks a question and the first student to answer is confident, others are likely to agree with that answer. Even students who know it's wrong may stay silent to avoid standing out. The group's response creates pressure that shapes behavior, sometimes at the expense of accuracy. Consider a workplace where a new policy is introduced. At first, employees are unsure how to respond. Then a few vocal supporters speak positively about it. Slowly, others begin to echo their approval. Within weeks, most of the team has adopted the policy, not because they truly believe in it, but because it seems like everyone else does. The appearance of consensus becomes reality. Social proof can have a positive impact when used ethically. Public health campaigns often rely on it. For example, signs in restrooms that say, "Most people wash their hands before leaving," are more effective than commands like, "Wash your hands." By showing that good behavior is common, a message taps into the desire to follow the crowd. Fundraising campaigns use similar tactics. When potential donors see a list of names or amounts already given, they feel encouraged to join in. The display of participation makes giving feel like the expected choice. Each new donation strengthens the signal for the next person. This principle can also help people feel safe in unfamiliar situations. A tourist entering a foreign city might not understand local customs. Watching what others do provides guidance. If everyone removes their shoes before entering a building, the tourist does the same. The crowd becomes a source of comfort and direction. However, blind reliance on social proof can lead to mistakes. History offers many examples of groups following harmful trends simply because no one wanted to stand apart. Financial bubbles, dangerous fads, and even large-scale social movements have all been fueled by this instinct. The same force that creates unity can also create disaster when no one pauses to question the group. A small moment captures this clearly. At a party, a person tells a joke that isn't very funny. One person laughs politely. Another joins in. Within seconds, the entire group is laughing. The original joke hasn't changed, but the shared reaction has taken on a life of its own. Each laugh reinforces the next until it feels like genuine humor. Every day, choices are shaped by the silent influence of others. Whether picking a restaurant, voting in an election, or reacting to a simple joke, people look to the group for cues. The crowd's behavior provides comfort in uncertainty, guiding actions in ways that often feel natural and inevitable. A volunteer walks through a quiet neighborhood holding a clipboard. She knocks on a door and smiles when it opens. Instead of asking for a large donation right away, she begins with a simple request. Would you be willing to sign a petition to support local parks? The request takes only a few seconds. Most people agree and sign. A few days later, the same volunteer returns to the same houses. This time, she asks for a small financial contribution to help improve those parks. Many of the same people who signed the petition now agree to give money. The first small act opened the door to a bigger commitment. This is the foot in the door technique. By getting someone to say yes to a small, easy request, the chance of them agreeing to a larger one increases. It works because people like to see themselves as consistent. Once they take a stand, even in a minor way, they feel pressure to act in line with that position in the future. Imagine a neighbor who asks for a tiny favor, like bringing in their mail while they're away for the weekend. The favor requires little effort, so it's easy to agree. A few weeks later, the same neighbor asks for help watering plants or watching their pet while they travel. Because the first favor was done, it feels natural to say yes again. Turning down the second request would create discomfort, almost like breaking an unspoken promise. Businesses often use this principle without calling attention to it. A store might ask customers to sign up for a free loyalty card. Signing up takes just a moment and costs nothing. Later, when the store sends an email offering a paid membership with special benefits, many customers accept. The initial free action creates a mental link to the brand. Saying yes a second time feels like continuing a relationship rather than starting something new. Nonprofits rely on this strategy as well. A group promoting environmental awareness might first ask people to wear a small pin or place a sticker on their car. The request is so simple that most people agree. Later, when the group asks for donations or volunteer hours, the earlier action serves as proof of personal commitment. People want to stay true to the identity they've begun to build. Consider a workplace scenario. A manager needs employees to adopt a new process that will require significant changes. Instead of announcing the full plan at once, the manager starts by asking the team to try one small step. The change is minimal and easy to handle, so the team agrees. Over the next few weeks, the manager adds more steps, each building on the last. By the time the full process is in place, the team feels invested because they've been saying yes all along. This technique works best when the first request is genuine and not overwhelming. If the opening ask feels too big, people may resist and shut down completely. A subtle, reasonable request creates trust. Once trust is established, larger requests seem like natural progressions rather than sudden demands. A classic study demonstrates this effect. Researchers went door to door asking homeowners to place a small sign in their window promoting safe driving. Almost everyone agreed. 2 weeks later, the researchers returned, asking those same homeowners to install a much larger, more intrusive sign on their lawn. Many who had agreed to the small window sign now said yes to the bigger lawn sign. Homeowners who were approached only with the large sign, without the smaller step first, were far more likely to refuse. This method appears in personal relationships as well. In friendships, someone might ask for a minor favor, like borrowing a book. Once the book is returned without issue, the same person might feel comfortable asking for help moving furniture or giving a ride to the airport. The gradual buildup of trust makes the larger request seem reasonable. In marketing, free trials are a clear example. A company offers a free month of service. The commitment is small and temporary, so people sign up easily. When the trial ends, many choose to continue paying. The first yes created a sense of connection and consistency. Saying no later feels like stepping away from a decision already made. Parents sometimes use this approach with children. Instead of demanding a complete cleanup of a messy room, They might start by asking the child to put away just the toys on the floor. Once that task is complete, the parent adds another small step, like making the bed. By the end, the entire room is clean. The child feels accomplished, and the parent achieves their goal without a power struggle. The technique can be misused, leading to manipulation. Someone might start with harmless requests to gain trust, only to follow with unreasonable demands. For example, a salesperson might offer a free sample, then push for a large purchase using guilt or pressure. Recognizing this pattern helps people protect themselves from agreeing to things they don't truly want. Still, when used ethically, the foot in the door method can help build cooperation. Imagine a city trying to encourage recycling. Instead of demanding full participation immediately, officials might first ask residents to sort only paper products. Once the habit is established, they add plastics and metals. Over time, the community adapts without feeling overwhelmed. Another scenario plays out in group projects. A team leader needs members to take on extra work to meet a deadline. If they begin by asking for a small task, like staying an extra hour one evening, most people agree. Later, when a larger effort is needed, the team is more willing because they already committed in a smaller way. Each step builds momentum toward the final goal. Social dynamics make this effect stronger. When others see someone agree to a small request, they often follow along. A public yes becomes a signal to the group, creating a chain reaction. This can be seen during fundraising events. One person pledges a small amount. Others, seeing that act, feel encouraged to give as well. As the amounts grow, the collective willingness to contribute increases. Even in casual situations, the pattern holds. A neighbor might ask to borrow a cup of sugar. Later, they might ask to borrow a ladder. Each request builds on the last, creating a natural flow of cooperation. Refusing the second request feels awkward because the relationship now includes a history of giving and receiving. This technique works because people want to act in ways that match their self-image. If someone sees themselves as helpful, reliable, or generous, their actions will align with that identity. Saying yes to a small request creates a story about who they are. Later, when a bigger request comes, they continue the story by saying yes again. The first step is critical. It must feel effortless and safe. When that step is in place, each following request feels less like a new decision and more like a continuation of something already begun. Over time, small agreements stack up, leading to actions that might have seemed impossible at the start. A family walks into a car dealership ready to buy their first new vehicle. The salesperson greets them warmly and leads them to a shiny model displayed under bright lights. Before discussing details, the salesperson casually mentions that this car usually sells for $45,000. Even though the family had planned to spend closer to $30,000, that higher number now sits in their minds. When they later see a similar car priced at $38,000, it feels like a bargain. The first number became an anchor, shaping how every other price is judged. This is the anchoring effect. The first figure or option presented creates a mental reference point. All decisions that follow are compared to that initial piece of information, even if it has no real connection to the actual value of the thing being considered. Once an anchor is set, it's hard to move past it. The brain clings to it, using it as a guide without realizing it's doing so. Consider a fundraiser at a local school. Parents receive a letter asking for donations. The first sentence says, most families contribute around $100. That number immediately sets expectations. Some parents might have thought of giving $20 before reading the letter, but now that seems too low. Others may stretch to match or even exceed the suggested amount. The anchor creates a sense of what is normal, even though the number was chosen by the organizers and not by the families themselves. Anchoring shows up in negotiations constantly. A job candidate sits down for an interview. When asked about salary expectations, they say they are looking for $80,000 a year. From that moment, Every figure discussed revolves around that first number. If the employer later offers $75,000, it feels close and reasonable, even if the company was originally prepared to offer $60,000. The opening statement defined the playing field. Real estate agents often use anchoring deliberately. A house might be listed for a high price to set expectations, even if the seller is willing to accept less. When potential buyers see the initial number, it frames their entire view of the property. A slight discount later feels like a win, even if the final price is still above market value. Without the anchor, the same number might have seemed far too high. This effect works beyond money. Imagine two friends deciding where to go for dinner. The first says, "Let's try that fancy steakhouse downtown." The second friend immediately begins comparing other options to that suggestion. Even if they end up at a casual diner, the steakhouse remains the point of reference. Without realizing it, the first friend shaped the entire conversation just by naming a starting place. Anchoring can influence decisions about time as well. A project manager might estimate that a task will take 10 weeks. Team members then plan around that number. If the project ends in 9 weeks, it feels like a success. If it takes 11, it feels like a failure. The original estimate becomes the standard, even though it was only a rough guess. This effect can be powerful in retail settings. Picture a clothing store during a big sale. A jacket hangs on the rack with a tag showing the original price of $200. Next to it, a red sticker shows the sale price of $120. Shoppers focus on the discount, feeling like they're saving money. The original price acts as an anchor, making the sale price seem like a great deal. Without that first number, $120 might feel expensive for a simple jacket. Even random numbers can create anchors. In one well-known experiment, people spun a wheel with numbers on it. After spinning, they were asked to guess the percentage of countries in Africa that are members of the United Nations. Those who saw higher numbers on the wheel gave higher guesses. The number on the wheel had nothing to do with the question, yet it still shaped the answers. This shows how strongly the mind latches onto the first figure it encounters. Anchoring affects everyday conversations in subtle ways. Imagine a parent telling a teenager they must be home by 10 p.m. The teenager negotiates for 11. They eventually agree on 10:30. If the parent had started by saying 9:30 instead, the final time might have been completely different. The starting point shaped the outcome before the discussion even began. Restaurants often use this principle in menu design. The most expensive item is placed at the top. Diners see a $40 steak first. When they later see a $28 pasta dish, it seems affordable in comparison. Without the anchor of the higher price, the pasta might have seemed costly on its own. The order of presentation guides the perception of value. Anchoring can influence how people think about personal goals. A runner training for a marathon might set an initial goal of finishing in 4 hours. Even if they later adjust expectations, that first goal stays in their mind. Each training run is measured against it. A time of 4 hours and 15 minutes might feel disappointing because the anchor was set at 4, even though it's still a strong performance. This effect also appears in legal settings. During a trial, a lawyer might suggest a high number for damages early in the case. Even if the jury knows it's just an opening figure, it influences their thinking. Later, when a lower number is proposed, it feels more reasonable by comparison. The first number planted the seed for all future decisions. In workplaces, anchoring shapes negotiations over resources. A department head might request a budget increase of 20%, even if upper management plans to approve only 10%. The higher initial request frames the discussion. When the department receives 15%, it feels like a fair compromise, even though it's more than what leadership originally intended to give. Anchoring can be used to motivate behavior too. A fitness instructor might tell a class that most participants do 20 push-ups during a set. Even if some people could comfortably do only 10, they now aim higher because the reference point changed their expectations. The number itself doesn't reflect individual ability, but it sets a standard that shapes effort. Anchors are difficult to ignore because the brain naturally searches for context. Faced with uncertainty, people look for any clue to guide them. The first piece of information encountered becomes that clue, sticking even when it's irrelevant or inaccurate. Once it's in place, every decision feels like a comparison against it. Imagine someone walking into an art gallery. The first painting they see has a price tag of $5,000. Every other piece in the gallery is judged against that figure. A painting priced at $3,000 seems affordable, even if it would have felt expensive without the initial anchor. The first number silently shapes the entire experience. Anchoring works because it provides a starting point in a world full of choices. Whether buying a car, setting a deadline, or simply picking a place for dinner, the first option presented exerts a quiet but powerful influence. Even when people believe they are thinking independently, their decisions often circle back to the very first number they heard. A line forms outside a small bakery early in the morning. The smell of fresh bread drifts into the street as people wait patiently. Inside, the baker sets out just 20 loaves of a special sourdough that's made only once a week. By mid-morning, the loaves are gone. Those who manage to buy one leave with a sense of pride, while those who missed out promise themselves they'll arrive earlier next time. The bread may taste no different from other loaves in the shop, but its limited supply makes it feel more valuable. This is the scarcity effect. When something is rare or hard to get, people desire it more. It's not just about the thing itself, but about what it represents: access, status, and the fear of missing out. Scarcity creates urgency. The mind sees the limited supply as a signal that the item must be worth having, even if there's little evidence to support that belief. Consider an online store selling a popular pair of shoes. The website shows a small banner reading "Only 3 left in stock." Shoppers who were unsure about buying suddenly feel pressure to act. The shoes haven't changed, but the risk of losing the chance to buy them creates a surge of desire. A purchase that felt optional now feels necessary. Travel websites use this effect constantly. A hotel listing might display a message like, "2 rooms left at this price." The traveler might have planned to keep browsing, but the warning pushes them to book right away. Even if there are plenty of other hotels available, the idea of losing out on this particular deal feels uncomfortable. Scarcity works because it taps into basic survival instincts. Long ago, resources like food and water were limited. Those who acted quickly to secure them had a better chance of survival. Today, the same instinct drives behavior. Even when the stakes are far lower, a limited edition sneaker isn't essential for survival, but the brain reacts as if it were. Exclusive memberships use this principle to great effect. Imagine a private club with a waiting list. Even if the benefits of joining are modest, people want to be part of it simply because not everyone can. The barrier to entry creates a sense of importance. Being chosen feels like winning something rare and valuable. In workplaces, scarcity influences how opportunities are viewed. A training program with unlimited spots might attract little attention. The same program with only 10 openings creates excitement and competition. Employees rush to sign up, not necessarily because the program itself changed, but because the limited number signals prestige. Scarcity can shape how time is perceived, too. A restaurant might offer a special dish only for a single weekend. Customers who might normally wait decide to visit immediately. The temporary nature of the offer makes it feel special. Once the weekend ends, the dish may never return, and the chance will be gone forever. A well-known story highlights this effect. A small bookstore kept a rare, signed copy of a famous novel on display. For months, customers admired it, but no one bought it. Then the store owner placed a note next to the book, only one copy available. Within 2 days, it sold. The book had been there all along. But the reminder of its scarcity changed how people saw it. This principle appears in relationships as well. When a person seems too available, they may be taken for granted. When they set boundaries and limit their time, others begin to value it more. The same amount of attention feels richer when it's not always guaranteed. Ticket sales for concerts and events often rely on scarcity. Promoters announce that only a certain number of seats are available. Fans who hesitate risk missing out entirely. Even those who weren't deeply interested in attending may feel compelled to buy tickets simply to avoid regret later. The fear of loss outweighs the actual desire to attend. Retailers sometimes create artificial scarcity. A company might release a product in small batches, even though they could easily produce more. This strategy keeps demand high and ensures that every release feels like a special event. Luxury brands use this approach to maintain their image. A handbag sold in limited numbers carries more prestige than one anyone can buy at any time. However, scarcity doesn't always involve physical goods. Information can be scarce too. When a piece of news or gossip is labeled as secret or exclusive, people lean in closer. The very act of restricting access makes the information seem more valuable, regardless of its actual content. Workplaces sometimes see this play out during promotions. If leadership makes it clear that only one position is available, employees work harder and compete fiercely. The role becomes more desirable, not because of its duties, but because of its limited availability. Scarcity can influence negotiations. A seller might say, "This offer is good until the end of the day." Even if the deadline is arbitrary, the buyer feels pressure to decide quickly, without time to reflect. They are more likely to agree to terms they might have rejected with more space to think. In personal decisions, scarcity often shows up when people make plans. A group of friends tries to schedule a weekend trip. At first, no one commits. Then one friend mentions they are free only one specific weekend. Suddenly, everyone rearranges their schedules to match. The limited window creates urgency and focus. This effect also explains why collectibles hold such strong appeal. A limited edition coin, stamp, or toy can command high prices even if the materials are ordinary. The knowledge that only a few exist drives demand. People aren't just buying the object, they're buying the feeling of owning something rare. Consider a charity auction. Two similar paintings are displayed side by side. The first has several identical copies available. The second is the only one of its kind. Even if the first painting is more beautiful, the second will likely attract higher bids. The scarcity of the item shapes how much value people assign to it. Digital spaces amplify this effect. Online games often release rare items or characters for a limited time. Players who might not care about the item's actual use still feel compelled to acquire it before it disappears. The ticking clock drives action, keeping players engaged. Scarcity can even affect how people view themselves. A compliment given sparingly can have a stronger impact than constant praise. When recognition feels rare, it becomes more meaningful. This is why a single award or honor can motivate someone for years. The flip side of scarcity is abundance. When something is always available, interest fades. A store that keeps a product fully stocked and constantly on sale may see demand drop, even if the product is excellent. Without the push of urgency, people assume they can always come back later. A simple example happens every holiday season. A popular toy hits the shelves, and stores announce that supplies are limited. Parents rush to buy, sometimes standing in long lines or paying extra online. A few months later, when the toy is easy to find, interest fades. The same item now feels ordinary because the scarcity has vanished. Scarcity works because it plays on fear. The fear of missing out, of losing a chance, of being left behind. When something is limited, it captures attention and creates a sense of importance. People act quickly and decisively, driven not just by what they want, but by the possibility that it could slip away forever. A child sits on the edge of a bed, fists clenched, face red with frustration. The parent kneels down and says softly, "You're angry because your toy broke." The child nods, breathing slowing just a little. The words don't fix the toy, but they shift something inside. The storm begins to settle, not because the problem is solved, but because the feeling has been named. Naming emotions has a powerful effect on the mind. When a person puts words to what they feel, the chaos inside starts to take shape. A swirl of anger, fear, or sadness becomes something tangible and defined. Once it's named, it feels less overwhelming. The act of labeling gives the brain a sense of control. Instead of being consumed by an emotion, a person begins to see it from a small distance. Consider a stressful workplace meeting. A manager announces unexpected changes, and a wave of tension sweeps through the room. One employee feels their chest tighten and thoughts race, but they don't immediately know why. Later, while talking with a trusted colleague, they say out loud, "I think I'm anxious about losing my role." As soon as the words are spoken, the anxiety softens slightly. It's still there, but naming it provides clarity. It's like turning on a light in a dark room. The unknown becomes visible. This effect has roots in how the brain works. Strong emotions activate areas linked to survival and instinct. Fear, anger, and panic surge through the body, demanding immediate action. Language comes from a different part of the brain, one connected to reasoning and planning. When an emotion is labeled, those reasoning centers activate. The feeling doesn't disappear, but it becomes easier to manage. Imagine someone standing backstage before giving a speech. Their hands shake and their stomach churns. If they tell themselves, "I'm terrified," the words create space between the feeling and the person experiencing it. Now, instead of drowning in fear, they are observing it. The emotion becomes an object they can interact with rather than a force that controls them. This practice is often seen in therapy sessions. A client might arrive overwhelmed, saying only, "I feel awful." Through conversation, the therapist helps them sort through layers of emotion. They might discover that beneath the surface there is sadness, disappointment, or guilt. As each feeling is named, the intensity decreases. It's like unpacking a heavy bag and setting the contents on the table. The weight remains, but it no longer presses so hard on the shoulders. Parents often use this with children who haven't yet learned to express complex feelings. A toddler might throw a tantrum because they don't have the words to describe frustration. When a caregiver calmly says, "You're upset because you wanted to keep playing," the child begins to connect the inner storm to specific words. Over time, this builds emotional intelligence. The child learns to say, "I'm sad," instead of collapsing into tears. In tense situations, naming emotions can prevent conflicts from escalating. Two friends might argue, voices rising. One pauses and says, "I'm feeling hurt by what you said." The simple act of labeling the feeling shifts the dynamic. The other friend now understands it's about pain rather than pure anger. With that understanding, the conversation becomes easier to navigate. Without the label, both people might stay locked in defensive positions, unable to move forward. Workplaces benefit from this skill as well. A team under pressure might spiral into frustration. A leader who says, "I can tell we're all feeling stressed about this deadline," helps everyone breathe for a moment. The acknowledgement doesn't solve the workload issue, but it calms the room by bringing the unspoken into the open. It signals that the emotion is seen and understood, which makes it easier to handle. This technique also works privately. When emotions rise, Taking a moment to silently name them can reduce their hold. A person stuck in traffic might feel irritation building. By saying quietly to themselves, "I'm frustrated," they create a pause. The feeling is still there, but it loses some of its edge. The pause opens space for a choice: continue stewing in anger or shift focus to something more productive. Imagine a young athlete after a tough loss. Their first instinct might be to slam a locker door or yell in frustration. A coach approaches and says, "You're disappointed because you worked hard and wanted to win." Hearing that label helps the athlete process the experience. The raw anger begins to settle into a more manageable form of sadness. From there, they can think about how to improve for next time. Even in moments of fear, this approach can bring relief. Someone lying awake at night might feel a tightness in their chest and racing thoughts. If they whisper to themselves, "I'm anxious about tomorrow's meeting," the fear shifts slightly. It goes from an unnamed, shadowy threat to a specific, understandable feeling. Once named, it becomes easier to plan ways to cope, like preparing notes or practicing deep breathing. Research shows that labeling emotions works because it forces the brain to slow down. Instead of reacting automatically, the person begins to reflect. This reflection activates reasoning and problem-solving skills. The body's stress response, like rapid heartbeat and shallow breathing, begins to ease. It's not magic. It's a small but measurable shift that gives the mind space to think. Consider a couple facing financial strain. Tension builds over weeks of silent worry. During one difficult conversation, one partner says, "I'm scared we won't be able to pay the bills." The other responds, "I'm feeling overwhelmed too." The moment those emotions are named, the conversation changes. Instead of blaming each other, they can work together to find solutions. The problem remains, but it no longer feels like an unnamed monster lurking between them. Social situations can also benefit from this practice. At a crowded party, someone might feel uneasy but unsure why. By pausing and saying inwardly, "I'm nervous because I don't know many people here," they gain perspective. The unease becomes less mysterious and therefore less powerful. Now they can decide how to approach the situation, maybe by introducing themselves to just one person instead of forcing small talk with everyone. Naming emotions can prevent impulsive reactions. Picture a driver cut off in traffic. The surge of anger tempts them to honk or shout. If they take a deep breath and think, "I'm angry because that felt unsafe," the feeling softens. The simple acknowledgement creates a buffer between the emotion and the action that might follow. That buffer can prevent a bad moment from becoming a dangerous confrontation. Even small, everyday frustrations benefit from this technique. A person waiting in a long line might mutter, "I'm impatient." By naming it, they shift from being consumed by the feeling to simply noticing it. That small change can prevent the irritation from spilling over into rudeness or tension with others. This practice takes time to develop. At first, it might feel awkward or forced to name emotions out loud or even silently, but with repetition, it becomes natural. Each time an emotion is labeled, its intensity decreases slightly. Over weeks and months, this builds resilience. Emotions still arise, but they no longer control every thought and action. Moments of chaos become moments of clarity when words are applied. A flood of anger becomes simply anger. A knot of fear becomes fear. With that label in place, the feeling no longer defines the person experiencing it. It becomes something separate, something to work with rather than fight against. This small act of naming turns raw emotion into understanding, and understanding creates space for calm. Two friends sit in a quiet cafe, coffee cups between them. One speaks quickly, words tumbling out as they describe a hard week. The other stays silent, nodding and keeping eye contact. When the speaker pauses, the listener says, "So you felt left out when your ideas weren't included in the project, and it made you question whether your work matters." The speaker's shoulders drop. A small, relieved smile appears. Yes, they say. That's exactly it. In that moment, trust deepens. The listener didn't fix the problem, but by reflecting the words back, they showed understanding. Active listening is more than hearing sounds. It's a way of being fully present with another person. It involves focus, patience, and a willingness to set aside one's own thoughts long enough to truly absorb what is being said. When done well, it creates a safe space where people feel valued. They no longer have to fight to be heard, and that feeling builds connection. In a workplace, active listening can change the course of a team. Imagine a manager leading a meeting after a project failure. Team members speak up, voices tense. Instead of jumping in with solutions or defenses, the manager listens. When someone says, "We felt rushed and unprepared," the manager repeats, "You felt rushed and unprepared." This simple reflection shows that the words were taken in, not dismissed. Over time, this practice helps the team trust that their concerns matter. That trust leads to more honest conversations and better collaboration. Contrast this with a manager who interrupts or responds too quickly. When team members feel unheard, they start to withdraw. They stop sharing ideas, even good ones, because they believe their voices don't count. The group becomes quieter, but beneath the silence, frustration grows. Work may continue, but the connection between people weakens. Active listening also shapes personal relationships. A parent might notice their teenager stomping around the house after school. Instead of saying, "Calm down," the parent waits and listens. The teenager finally blurts out, "Everyone ignored me at lunch today." The parent replies, "It sounds like you felt invisible and hurt." The teenager nods, surprised to hear their feelings put into words. That moment of recognition opens the door for a deeper conversation. In friendships, active listening strengthens bonds. Consider a friend venting about a breakup. If the listener rushes to offer advice, "You should block them," or "You'll find someone better," the speaker may feel dismissed. But if the listener instead says, "It sounds like you feel betrayed and angry," the speaker feels seen. Even without advice, the simple act of naming the feelings brings comfort. This approach works because people crave validation. When someone reflects back key points, it signals respect. It shows that the listener cared enough to pay attention, not just to the words, but to the meaning behind them. A story from a hospital illustrates this power. A nurse noticed that patients often repeated the same complaints, even after receiving care. She decided to try something different. Instead of rushing through rounds, she paused at each bedside and said, "I hear that you're worried about the pain and how long you'll be here." The patients relaxed, even when the treatment plan didn't change. Feeling understood made their anxiety easier to bear. Active listening also prevents misunderstandings. In a busy office, two colleagues might misinterpret each other's tone or intent. One says, "I need those files by noon." The other hears it as a demand and grows defensive. If the second person responds with active listening, "You need these files by noon because the client meeting is right after lunch," it clears up confusion. The original request now feels like teamwork instead of criticism. Repeating key points doesn't mean parroting exact words. It means summarizing the essence of what was said. This shows comprehension and gives the speaker a chance to clarify if needed. It also helps slow down fast-moving conversations, especially during conflicts. In tense situations, people often stop listening to each other and start planning their next reply. This cycle escalates arguments. Active listening breaks that pattern. Imagine two siblings fighting over family responsibilities. One shouts, "You never help with anything." The other, instead of shouting back, says, "You feel like I haven't been pulling my weight." That reflection softens the anger. The first sibling nods, finally feeling heard. From there, they can discuss solutions instead of trading blame. Active listening requires presence, which is harder than it sounds. Distractions compete for attention, phones buzzing, thoughts drifting, tasks waiting. True listening means setting those aside. Even small signals like leaning forward, maintaining eye contact, and nodding show that the listener is engaged. Silence plays an important role too. When someone pauses, It can be tempting to fill the gap with words, but silence often encourages deeper sharing. A person might need a few extra seconds to find the right words. By waiting, the listener gives space for those words to emerge. In group settings, active listening can create ripple effects. During a team meeting, one person models this skill by reflecting others' ideas. Soon, others start doing the same. The group dynamic shifts. Instead of competing to be heard, members begin to build on each other's thoughts. Meetings become less about speaking the loudest and more about reaching understanding. A negotiation offers another example. Two companies sit down to discuss a partnership. Tension fills the room. One side states their concerns about cost and timing. The other side replies, "You're worried about keeping expenses low while meeting deadlines." This reflection diffuses tension. It shows that the concerns were understood, not ignored. Trust grows, making it easier to reach an agreement. Even brief interactions benefit from this skill. A cashier who says, "So you're having a tough day," to a frustrated customer can transform the mood of the exchange. The customer feels acknowledged, which often softens anger. This small moment can prevent larger conflicts and leave a lasting impression. Active listening builds trust over time. Each conversation adds a layer to the relationship. People begin to feel safe, sharing not just surface details, but deeper truths. They know they won't be judged or dismissed. This trust becomes a foundation for cooperation, whether between friends, coworkers, or strangers. Consider a sports team in the middle of a losing streak. Players feel discouraged, and tempers run high. The coach gathers them and listens as each player speaks. After each comment, the coach reflects back what was heard. "You're feeling frustrated because you don't see progress," or "You're worried about letting your teammates down." By naming these feelings, the coach shows understanding. Players begin to trust that their struggles matter. With that trust, they can focus on improving performance rather than blaming each other. In families, this practice can heal old wounds. During a difficult conversation, a sibling might say, "You never appreciated what I did for the family." If the other sibling responds defensively, the conflict deepens. But as they respond with active listening, you feel like your efforts went unnoticed. The conversation shifts. It moves from accusation to connection. The essence of active listening lies in giving full attention and reflecting understanding. When someone feels heard, defenses lower. Solutions emerge naturally. Relationships strengthen because both sides know their voices matter. This simple act of truly listening becomes a bridge between people, turning words into trust. Two strangers meet for the first time in a quiet waiting room. At first, they sit stiffly, each lost in their own thoughts. One crosses a leg, and a few moments later, the other does the same without noticing. When one leans forward slightly, the other mirrors the movement. Their conversation starts awkwardly, but soon flows more smoothly. By the end, they feel surprisingly comfortable with each other. Nothing dramatic happened, but their bodies created a silent rhythm of connection. Mirroring is the subtle act of matching another person's posture, gestures, tone, and even a pace of speech. It happens naturally when people feel connected. Friends talking at a cafe often lean forward at the same time or take sips of their drinks together, without planning it. Couples walking side by side tend to match their steps. These tiny adjustments send a powerful signal. We are in sync. Consider a job interview. A candidate sits across from a hiring manager. If the manager speaks slowly and calmly, a fast-talking candidate might seem out of step. But if the candidate adjusts, slowing their pace and mirroring the manager's calm tone, the interaction feels smoother. The manager may not consciously notice the change, but they leave the meeting with a sense that the candidate just felt right. This same effect appears in negotiations. Two business partners sit across a table, discussing terms. At first, tension is high. One partner leans back, arms crossed. The other sits forward, voice sharp. As the conversation continues, one begins to match the other's posture, leaning back slightly and softening their tone. Slowly, the other responds in kind. The shift is almost invisible, but the atmosphere changes. A guarded conversation turns into a collaborative one, all because of nonverbal alignment. Mirroring works because humans are wired to connect. In early childhood, babies mimic facial expressions of those around them. A baby smiles, and the parent smiles back. This back and forth creates safety and trust long before words are spoken. That instinct never disappears. Adults still respond to subtle signs of sameness, often without realizing why. A salesperson uses this principle when speaking with customers. If a customer folds their arms, the salesperson might do the same for a moment, then gradually open their posture. Often, the customer follows without thinking. This creates a quiet sense of comfort. The customer feels understood, even though nothing has been said directly about feelings or intentions. Mirroring extends to tone of voice and choice of words. Imagine a doctor explaining a diagnosis. A patient speaks softly, using simple terms. If the doctor responds in the same gentle tone and mirrors that simplicity, the patient feels reassured. If the doctor uses rapid speech and complex language, the patient may feel overwhelmed or disconnected. The technique shows up in friendships too. Two friends meeting after a long day might start out at different energy levels. One is tired and quiet, while the other is upbeat and talkative. As they spend time together, they naturally adjust. The lively friend softens their tone, while the quiet friend becomes a bit more animated. By the end of the evening, they are moving and speaking in a shared rhythm. There is a story of a teacher working with a group of anxious students. At first, the students sit rigid and silent. The teacher begins by matching their posture, also sitting quietly and still. Then, little by little, the teacher relaxes their shoulders and smiles. Without a word, the students begin to do the same. By mirroring first and then leading gently, the teacher shifts the entire mood of the room. In high-stakes situations, mirroring can diffuse conflict. Imagine two coworkers arguing over a missed deadline. One is standing, voice raised, arms tense. The other, instead of pushing back, mirrors the stance for a moment, then slowly sits down and lowers their tone. Often, the first person will unconsciously follow. What began as a shouting match can turn into a calm discussion through these subtle cues. Even silence can be mirrored. During a difficult conversation, one person might pause to think. If the other also remains silent instead of rushing to fill the space, it creates respect and patience. The shared stillness builds trust without a single word spoken. Mirroring works best when it's natural and subtle. If done too obviously, it feels forced or manipulative. People sense when someone is copying them in an exaggerated way. True mirroring happens in small, almost invisible shifts. It's about harmony, not imitation. Consider a cafe meeting between a mentor and mentee. The mentor speaks slowly and pauses often. The mentee, eager to impress, might start out talking quickly. By gradually matching the mentor's pace, the mentee creates a smoother interaction. Over time, the two settle into a shared rhythm, making the conversation flow naturally. Even in group settings, mirroring can create unity. A sports team huddles before a big game. At first, some players are bouncing with energy while others hang back, tense and quiet. The captain starts by matching the energy of the quieter players, speaking softly. Then, gradually, they increase volume and movement. The whole team follows, coming together as one. The shift feels organic because it began with alignment rather than sudden commands. Mirroring can also reveal connection that already exists. Watch two close friends walking together. Their steps match. Their heads turn at the same moment. Even their laughter often rises and falls in unison. These patterns show trust and understanding without words. In professional settings, skilled negotiators use mirroring to build rapport. During difficult talks, one side might mirror the other's language choices. If the other party says, "I'm worried about delays," the negotiator replies, "You're worried about delays." This verbal mirroring makes the speaker feel heard and understood. It's a bridge between positions, even when solutions haven't been found yet. A subtle example appears in customer service. A frustrated client calls about a problem. They speak quickly and sharply. The representative begins with the same quick pace to show urgency, then gradually slows their speech. Often, the client slows down too, without realizing why. This shift creates calm and makes problem-solving easier. Even animals respond to mirroring. Dog trainers often match a dog's energy level at first, moving quickly with an excited dog or slowly with a cautious one. Once trust is established, the trainer leads the dog into a new state by changing their own behavior. The principle is universal. Connection begins with alignment. Everyday life is full of small, silent dances of mirroring. Two people shaking hands might subtly match grip strength and posture. A group laughing together might fall into the same rhythm of breathing. These moments pass unnoticed, yet they shape how people feel about each other. A simple experiment shows its power. In one study, researchers had participants talk with partners who either mirrored their movements or didn't. Those who experienced mirroring reported feeling more connected and liked their partners more, even when they couldn't pinpoint why. The effect was unconscious but strong. Mirroring creates a sense of belonging. It tells the other person, "I'm with you. I understand you." No grand speeches or dramatic gestures are required. Just a slight lean forward, a softened voice, or a shared pause can transform a conversation. These small signals bridge gaps between strangers, teammates, families, and even rivals, building trust quietly, one mirrored moment at a time. A tense meeting room holds a mix of silence and unspoken frustration. A project has gone off track, deadlines missed, and tempers are near breaking. The leader of the group looks around and doesn't rush to speak. Instead, they study faces, notice slumped shoulders, clenched jaws, and nervous glances. When they finally talk, they don't start with numbers or plans. They say, "I can see how frustrated everyone is. And I know many of you are feeling unappreciated after putting in long hours." A collective exhale ripples through the room. People sit up straighter, ready to listen. The leader hasn't fixed the project yet, but by naming the emotions in the room, they've shifted the energy. Empathy is often thought of as kindness or softness, but it is also a tool. Understanding how others feel gives insight into their decisions and actions. With that understanding, a person can influence outcomes, for better or worse. Empathy can heal conflicts and build alliances, but it can also be used to manipulate when the intent is selfish. Consider a skilled negotiator entering a high-stakes deal. They don't just focus on the terms, they study the other side's emotions. If they sense fear about missing an opportunity, they adjust their approach, offering reassurance while applying gentle pressure. If they detect pride, they frame their proposal in a way that lets the other party feel like a winner. The actual words matter less than the feelings being addressed. By meeting those feelings directly, the negotiator guides the discussion without force. Parents use empathy every day, sometimes without realizing it. A child refuses to go to school, throwing a tantrum. A parent who reacts with anger might escalate the situation. A parent who pauses and says, "You're scared about seeing your teacher today," acknowledges the feeling beneath the behavior. Once the fear is named, the child calms down enough to talk about solutions. The parent's empathy turns a battle into cooperation. The same principle appears in workplaces. A manager who understands that an employee's resistance to a new policy comes from anxiety about learning new skills can address the fear directly. Instead of issuing commands, they can offer support and training. The employee feels understood, and becomes more willing to adapt. Without that empathy, the manager might misread the situation as laziness or defiance and respond with punishment, which only deepens resistance. Empathy can also play a darker role. A manipulative coworker might study a teammate's emotions and use them for personal gain. If they know someone craves approval, they might offer flattery to gain their trust, then exploit that trust later. If they notice someone fears conflict, they might push boundaries, confident the person won't speak up. This is still empathy. It's just empathy used to harm rather than to help. A famous story illustrates both sides. A civil rights leader once faced an angry crowd ready to riot after a violent event. Instead of shouting back or demanding calm, the leader spoke to the crowd's pain. "I know you are hurt. I know you are angry," they said. "I feel it too." The acknowledgement diffused the tension. The crowd quieted and chose peaceful action instead of violence. This was empathy at its most constructive, understanding emotions and using that understanding to steer people toward a better outcome. On the other hand, history is full of leaders who used empathy to control. They studied what their followers wanted most: safety, belonging, power, and spoke directly to those desires. By reflecting back those emotions, they gained loyalty and influence, even when their actions caused harm. This shows why empathy is powerful. It bypasses logic and speaks straight to the heart. Everyday interactions show smaller examples. Imagine a salesperson who notices a customer hesitating. Instead of pushing harder, a tense meeting room holds a mix of silence and unspoken frustration. A project has gone off track, deadlines missed, and tempers are near breaking. The leader of the group looks around and doesn't rush to speak. Instead, they study faces, notice slumped shoulders, clenched jaws, and nervous glances. When they finally talk, they don't start with numbers or plans. They say, "I can see how frustrated everyone is. And I know many of you are feeling unappreciated after putting in long hours." A collective exhale ripples through the room. People sit up straighter, ready to listen. The leader hasn't fixed the project yet, but by naming the emotions in the room, they've shifted the energy. Empathy is often thought of as kindness or softness, but it is also a tool. Understanding how others feel gives insight into their decisions and actions. With that understanding, a person can influence outcomes, for better or worse. Empathy can heal conflicts and build alliances, but it can also be used to manipulate when the intent is selfish. Consider a skilled negotiator entering a high-stakes deal. They don't just focus on the terms, they study the other side's emotions. If they sense fear about missing an opportunity, they adjust their approach, offering reassurance while applying gentle pressure. If they detect pride, they frame their proposal in a way that lets the other party feel like a winner. The actual words matter less than the feelings being addressed. By meeting those feelings directly, the negotiator guides the discussion without force. Parents use empathy every day, sometimes without realizing it. A child refuses to go to school, throwing a tantrum. A parent who reacts with anger might escalate the situation. A parent who pauses and says, "You're scared about seeing your teacher today," acknowledges the feeling beneath the behavior. Once the fear is named, the child calms down enough to talk about solutions. The parent's empathy turns a battle into cooperation. The same principle appears in workplaces. A manager who understands that an employee's resistance to a new policy comes from anxiety about learning new skills can address the fear directly. Instead of issuing commands, they can offer support and training. The employee feels understood and becomes more willing to adapt. Without that empathy, the manager might misread the situation as laziness or defiance and respond with punishment, which only deepens resistance. Empathy can also play a darker role. A manipulative coworker might study a teammate's emotions and use them for personal gain. If they know someone craves approval, they might offer flattery to gain their trust, then exploit that trust later. If they notice someone fears conflict, they might push boundaries, confident the person won't speak up. This is still empathy. It's just empathy used to harm rather than to help. A famous story illustrates both sides. A civil rights leader once faced an angry crowd ready to riot after a violent event. Instead of shouting back or demanding calm, the leader spoke to the crowd's pain. "I know you are hurt. I know you are angry," they said. "I feel it too." The acknowledgement diffused the tension. The crowd quieted and chose peaceful action instead of violence. This was empathy at its most constructive, understanding emotions and using that understanding to steer people toward a better outcome. On the other hand, history is full of leaders who used empathy to control. They studied what their followers wanted most: safety, belonging, power, and spoke directly to those desires. By reflecting back those emotions, they gained loyalty and influence, even when their actions caused harm. This shows why empathy is powerful. It bypasses logic and speaks straight to the heart. Everyday interactions show smaller examples. Imagine a salesperson who notices a customer hesitating. Instead of pushing harder, they say, "It sounds like you're worried about whether this will really meet your needs." The customer feels understood and begins to open up. Even if the salesperson is motivated by making a sale, the act of recognizing the customer's emotions creates a bridge. In friendships, empathy builds deep trust. When someone shares a painful experience, a friend who simply says, "That sounds really hard," creates safety. The speaker feels less alone. Over time, this trust allows for honest conversations. Without empathy, even well-meaning— A crowded subway car rattles through a tunnel when the train comes to a sudden stop. At first, there's silence, a collective pause as everyone processes what happened. Then, one passenger mutters nervously, "Something's wrong." Another person shifts in their seat, breathing faster. Within seconds, voices rise, eyes dart around, and panic spreads like wildfire. No announcement has been made, no danger confirmed, yet the mood of the group changes completely. Fear, once sparked in a single person, leaps from one to another until the whole car feels trapped in it. This is emotional contagion. Just as people can catch a cold from each other, they can catch emotions. A smile can ripple through a room, while anger can infect a meeting like smoke filling the air. It happens through body language, tone, and small signals the mind picks up without conscious thought. Humans are wired to connect this way because long ago, reading the feelings of others kept groups safe. If one person spotted danger and felt fear, the rest needed to feel it too and act quickly. Today, the threats are rarely life or death, but the mechanism remains. Consider a workplace where a big presentation is about to begin. The team waits nervously for their turn to speak. One team member walks in with a steady posture and calm expression. They speak slowly and clearly, projecting confidence. Others begin to relax, their shoulders lowering as their breathing steadies. The calm spreads quietly, turning scattered anxiety into focused readiness. If that same person had rushed in, frantic and scattered, their stress would have infected the group instead. In classrooms, teachers see this effect every day. A class taking a difficult exam can spiral into collective panic. One student sighs loudly and drops their pencil. Others hear it and start to worry, even if they were confident before. Soon, tension spreads across the room. A teacher who stays grounded can reverse the pattern. By speaking in a calm voice and moving slowly, they signal safety. The students, without even realizing it, begin to mirror that calmness. Sports teams live by this principle. During a tight game, players watch their coach closely. If the coach yells and flails, the players' stress levels spike. If the coach stays composed, even while giving urgent instructions, the team finds focus. The leader's emotional state sets the tone. It's not just about strategy, it's about creating the mood that drives performance. Families experience emotional contagion in smaller, quieter ways. A parent comes home after a long, hard day, carrying visible frustration. The children, sensing the mood, become tense or irritable without being told anything. The atmosphere shifts, and arguments spark over trivial things. On another day, when the parent enters with a smile and lightness, the whole house feels different. The unspoken emotions ripple outward, shaping how everyone interacts. Even laughter follows this pattern. A single, genuine laugh at a dinner table can spread until the entire group is laughing, sometimes without knowing what started it. Humans mirror joy just as easily as they mirror stress. This is why live audiences enhance performances. Comedians thrive on the energy of a laughing crowd. Each laugh reinforces the next, building a wave of shared emotion. The same dynamic plays out in crowds during crises. Imagine a busy airport when a sudden alarm sounds. If one person starts running, others follow, even before understanding the situation. The sight of fear triggers fear in others, and the reaction spreads faster than reason. Later, when it turns out to be a false alarm, people are left wondering why they ran. The answer lies in emotional contagion. This effect explains why certain individuals seem to change the atmosphere of a room just by entering. A leader who carries steady confidence can quiet a tense group without saying much. Their calm presence works like a counterweight, slowing the spread of anxiety. In contrast, a single panicked person can ignite chaos, even among those who were fine moments before. Online spaces amplify this phenomenon. Social media posts expressing outrage or fear often spread faster than neutral or positive ones. A single emotional message can trigger thousands of responses within minutes. People reading these posts absorb the feelings behind them and pass them on, often escalating the emotion as they share it. The result is a digital version of emotional contagion, one that can move far faster than face-to-face interactions. Consider a team in a high-pressure meeting. The project is behind schedule, and everyone knows it. One person starts by calmly stating the facts and suggesting solutions. Others follow that lead, staying focused and constructive. But if the first person opens with anger or blame, the rest of the group mirrors that energy. The conversation turns combative, and problem-solving stalls. The outcome depends less on the actual words spoken and more on the emotional tone set at the start. Children are especially sensitive to this process. A young child watches a parent closely during unfamiliar situations. If the parent shows fear when a dog approaches, the child learns to fear dogs too. If the parent stays relaxed, the child feels safe. This transfer of emotion happens long before children can explain what they feel. It shapes their understanding of the world in deep, lasting ways. Emergency workers trained to manage emotional contagion. Firefighters, paramedics, and pilots know that panic spreads quickly in dangerous situations. A single calm voice giving clear instructions can stop a group from spiraling out of control. These professionals practice staying grounded so others can mirror their steadiness. Their composure becomes a tool as essential as any piece of equipment. A story from a hospital shows this clearly. In a crowded emergency room, a patient suddenly collapses. Family members scream, and other patients start to panic. A nurse steps forward, speaking in a firm, even tone. "Everyone take a step back. We are taking care of him." The calmness in the nurse's voice spreads. People quiet down, following the steady presence. The crisis doesn't end instantly, but the chaos fades enough for the medical team to work effectively. In business, leaders who understand emotional contagion can shape culture deliberately. A manager who consistently models calm problem-solving creates a team that approaches challenges with steadiness. Over time, this becomes the group's default state. Conversely, a manager who reacts with anger or constant urgency teaches the team to do the same. The organization begins to live in stress, even when situations don't require it. Even small actions matter. In a tense conversation, slowing breathing and softening tone can influence the other person's response. A sigh of relief after a solution is found can signal closure and help everyone let go of lingering tension. These subtle cues ripple outward, shifting the emotional balance moment by moment. Imagine a group stranded at an airport due to a storm. At first, everyone is restless but quiet. Then one passenger begins yelling at the staff. Others join in, voices rising, frustration spreading. A different passenger steps in, speaking calmly and offering to help organize a line. Slowly, the mood changes. The anger doesn't vanish, but it starts growing. One calm presence interrupts the spread of panic, proving how contagious emotions can be in either direction. Emotional contagion is constant, shaping interactions from classrooms to boardrooms to crowded trains. Whether it leads to chaos or connection depends on who sets the tone first. A single person's state of mind can ripple outward, multiplying through every glance, gesture, and word. The choice to stay calm or spiral outward doesn't affect just one individual. It affects everyone within reach. A woman stands in the cereal aisle at a large grocery store. Rows of brightly colored boxes stretch out before her, each with a different flavor, texture, and promise. She picks up one box, then another, reading labels and comparing prices. 10 minutes pass, and she still hasn't placed anything in her cart. Overwhelmed by choices, she finally walks away without buying anything at all. She came to the store to make a simple purchase, but the sheer number of options froze her decision-making. This is analysis paralysis, a state where too many possibilities create confusion and inaction. The mind becomes tangled in comparing details, weighing pros and cons, and imagining what might go wrong. Instead of moving forward, it stalls. People like to think more options lead to better outcomes, but often the opposite is true. When the number of choices grows too large, the decision feels heavier and more complicated, and action slows or stops altogether. Consider a restaurant with a menu the size of a novel. The group of friends sits at a table, flipping through page after page. One person changes their mind 3 times before the waiter arrives. Another person blurts out the first thing they see because they feel pressured to choose quickly. After the meal, several leave feeling unsatisfied, wondering if they picked the wrong dish. The experience of choosing became stressful rather than enjoyable because there were simply too many paths to consider. This effect shows up in workplaces as well. A marketing team tasked with launching a new product gathers to plan their approach. They brainstorm ideas and end up with a whiteboard covered in possibilities. Digital ads, TV commercials, influencer partnerships, trade shows, email campaigns, and more. The abundance of options stalls progress. No one wants to eliminate an idea, and so the team keeps debating. Weeks pass without a clear plan. If they had started with just a few strong choices, they could have taken action much sooner. The weight of decision-making increases when the stakes feel high. A person shopping for a new car might face dozens of models, each with countless trim levels, colors, and features. The fear of making a wrong choice magnifies the pressure. Instead of feeling empowered by variety, the buyer feels trapped by it. Often, they leave the dealership without buying anything, telling themselves they need more time to think. In personal life, analysis paralysis can delay important milestones. Someone considering a career change might research every possible field, reading endless articles and job postings. They imagine different futures, weigh potential salaries, and worry about long-term consequences. With so many factors to consider, they never take the first step. Months or even years go by and nothing changes. The human brain handles choices by simplifying. When faced with a few options, it can evaluate them clearly. When options multiply, the brain struggles. It tries to compare every detail, but there's too much information. This overload leads to stress and fatigue. In some cases, people make a hasty decision just to escape the discomfort, later regretting it. In other cases, they avoid deciding altogether. Retailers have tested this principle. In one well-known experiment, shoppers were offered samples of jam at a grocery store. One table displayed 24 flavors, while another displayed only 6. More people stocked at the large display out of curiosity, but far fewer actually made a purchase. At the smaller display, customers were 10 times more likely to buy. The abundance of choices drew attention, but the simplicity of fewer options drove action. Imagine 2 friends discussing weekend plans. They list possible activities: movies, hiking, bowling, shopping, museums, concerts, and several restaurants. The list grows until neither knows what they actually want to do. Eventually, the conversation ends with no decision, and they stay home instead. If they had started with just 2 or 3 ideas, they would have chosen something and enjoyed their time together. Leaders often face this problem when guiding teams. A manager who presents too many strategies at once overwhelms their employees. The team becomes hesitant, unsure which direction to follow. By narrowing the focus to a few clear priorities, the manager makes it easier for everyone to act. Clarity drives momentum, while complexity stalls it. This principle even applies to daily routines. A person trying to start a fitness habit might read dozens of exercise programs. Each has different rules, schedules, and diets. The more they research, the harder it becomes to choose. In the end, they do nothing. If they had picked a single simple plan and started immediately, they would have made progress instead of spinning in circles. Analysis paralysis often brings guilt along with indecision. People feel they should be capable of handling many choices, so when they freeze, they blame themselves. In reality, the problem isn't weakness, it's overload. The structure of the decision itself creates the stuck feeling. Simplifying the structure often solves the issue. Consider a wedding planner meeting with a couple. She presents 3 options for table settings, each with distinct colors and styles. The couple quickly picks one they both like. In another meeting, the planner presents 20 options. The couple debates for hours, grows frustrated, and leaves feeling drained. The larger selection didn't bring happiness or confidence. It brought confusion and stress. This pattern affects group decisions even more strongly. In committees or teams, every additional option adds more voices and opinions. Meetings stretch longer as each person argues for their preference. The group may spend so much time discussing possibilities that they never implement any of them. Deadlines pass and energy is wasted. Limiting the initial list of choices prevents this spiral. Even simple daily tasks can become overwhelming when choices pile up. A person scrolling through streaming services might spend an hour deciding what to watch, then give up entirely. The endless rows of titles seem exciting at first, but the lack of clear boundaries makes it hard to settle on one. By contrast, when they open a physical shelf with only a handful of DVDs, they choose quickly and start watching. The pressure of modern life increases analysis paralysis. Technology exposes people to countless options for everything: what to buy, where to eat, how to communicate, even who to date. Apps and websites promise unlimited variety, but that variety comes at a cost. The brain wasn't built to handle constant decision-making at this scale. Over time, fatigue builds, making even small choices exhausting. Some organizations address this by deliberately reducing complexity. A clothing company might offer a limited range of styles and colors, making it easy for customers to decide. A productivity app might include only a few core features instead of dozens. By narrowing the field, these companies make action easier for their users. An emergency situation shows how limiting options speeds action. When a fire alarm sounds in a building, people don't stop to debate which exit to use or whether to finish their tasks. The choice is simple: leave immediately. The lack of competing options creates clarity, which drives survival-level speed. In everyday decisions, that same clarity leads to progress. A young artist once struggled to begin painting. They owned hundreds of brushes and dozens of colors. Each day, they spent hours deciding what tools to use. One day, they packed away most of their supplies, leaving only a single brush and a few paints on the table. With the decision simplified, they began to work. By removing choices, they unlocked action. The paradox of choice is that abundance feels good in theory, but paralyzing in practice. A limited set of options frees the mind to move forward. When possibilities stretch too wide, the path ahead blurs until it disappears, leaving only hesitation where action should be. A new employee starts work at a large company. During orientation, they are handed a stack of forms. One of them is for the retirement savings plan. The form already has a box checked for a specific contribution rate. The employee barely glances at it, signs at the bottom, and moves on. Months later, when talking with a coworker, they learn there are other contribution levels and investment options. The employee never changed the default setting because it was easier to stick with what was already chosen. This quiet decision, made almost without thought, shapes their financial future for years. This is the default bias. People tend to go with the option that's already in place, even when alternatives might be better. The default feels safe. It requires no effort, no risk, and no second guessing. Changing it demands energy and attention, and most people prefer to avoid that work. As a result, the default often wins by simple inertia. Consider a family signing up for a new internet service. The company automatically includes certain features in the standard package. The family assumes those are the right choices and never bothers to compare them with other plans. They may pay for things they don't need or miss out on better speeds and pricing, but the path of least resistance keeps them on the default track. This pattern shows up everywhere. In software, default settings determine how people experience technology. A phone might come with notifications turned on for every app. Most users keep them that way, even if the constant pings disrupt their day. Changing the settings takes time, and many never get around to it. The default becomes the reality, not because it's ideal, but because it was there first. Governments and organizations often use this principle deliberately. Some countries automatically enroll citizens in organ donation programs, giving them the choice to opt out if they wish. In those countries, participation rates are extremely high. In other countries, where people must actively sign up, rates are much lower. The difference isn't about beliefs or values. It's about which option is presented as the starting point. A workplace example shows how powerful this effect can be. A company offers employees 2 health insurance plans. In the enrollment system, one plan is pre-selected as the default. Even if the other plan might save certain employees money, many stick with the pre-selected option. The simple act of having to uncheck a box feels like extra work, so they don't do it. The default bias influences small, everyday choices too. At a coffee shop, a customer orders a drink. The barista automatically prepares it with whole milk because that's the standard. Even if the customer would prefer almond milk, they rarely speak up unless asked. The default silently shapes the experience. Psychologists explain this behavior as a mix of effort avoidance and loss aversion. Changing a default takes effort. Reading instructions, comparing options, making a decision. Even small amounts of effort can feel like barriers. At the same time, people fear making the wrong choice. If they stick with the default, they can blame the system if things go poorly. If they change it and regret it, the responsibility is theirs alone. The default feels safer because it spreads out accountability. Imagine a family buying a new car. The dealership offers several interior color options. But the base model comes with black seats. The family likes beige, but black is fine. Choosing a beige would mean filling out extra forms, waiting longer for delivery, and possibly paying more. In the moment, black wins. Months later, every time they see the interior, they remember that it wasn't their true preference. The small friction of changing the default shaped a long-term experience. This effect plays a role in online behavior. Social media platforms often have privacy settings that are wide open by default. Many users never adjust them, not because they consciously accept those settings, but because finding and changing them feels confusing. The default silently guides what information is shared. Companies use default bias strategically to influence customer behavior. A streaming service might automatically renew subscriptions unless users actively cancel. Many people continue paying long after they stop using the service. They may even feel frustrated, but still fail to take action. The default setting of automatic renewal wins by doing nothing. Consider a school cafeteria. If fruit is placed at eye level while candy is lower down, more students will grab fruit. The default presentation makes healthy choices easier. If the positions were reversed, candy would win instead. The physical setup acts like a silent default, steering behavior without rules or force. In group settings, defaults affect decision-making as well. During a meeting, the first suggestion often becomes the anchor point for discussion. If no one challenges it, the group treats it as the default plan. Even better ideas might get ignored simply because they require the effort of changing course. A story from a hospital illustrates this well. Doctors were given a checklist for prescribing medications. The form automatically filled in a standard dosage for common drugs. If a doctor wanted to adjust the dosage, they had to type it in manually. Most doctors stuck with the pre-filled amount. This saved time, but sometimes resulted in doses that weren't perfectly tailored to individual patients. The default didn't just influence decisions, it became the decision. People rarely notice how often they are guided by defaults. When signing up for an online account, the Accept All Terms button is big and bold, while the Customize Settings link is small and hidden. Most people click the big button without reading further. The company counts on this behavior, knowing that very few will take the extra steps to change anything. The default bias also affects emotional and social decisions. Imagine a group of friends choosing a restaurant. One person suggests a place, and everyone agrees without much discussion. It becomes the default choice, simply because it was mentioned first. Some members of the group might have preferred a different place, but stay quiet to avoid conflict. The initial suggestion wins by inertia, not enthusiasm. Default settings can even shape long-term habits. A new employee at a company might follow the same work routines as everyone else, even if they see inefficiencies. Changing those routines would require speaking up and possibly challenging established norms. It feels easier to keep doing things the way they've always been done. Over time, the default becomes tradition, passed down without question. There is comfort in sticking with the familiar. Defaults signal safety and stability. They tell people this path has been walked before. In busy lives filled with decisions, letting the default take over feels like a relief. It saves mental energy and reduces anxiety, even if it sometimes leads to less than optimal outcomes. Imagine a traveler booking a flight online. The booking site automatically adds travel insurance to the total. The traveler sees the final price but doesn't notice the extra charge. Even if they later realize they didn't need insurance, they accept it because unchecking the box feels like an extra step. The default collects silent consent. In another example, a family adopts a new puppy. The pet store sells several brands of food, but one is placed in a display labeled Recommended Starter Pack. The family chooses it without reading labels or comparing prices. Months later, they're still buying the same brand, not out of loyalty, but because it became the default from day one. Whether in forms, menus, apps, or conversations, the first option presented often becomes the final choice. Not because it's best, but because it's there. Defaults guide behavior quietly, shaping decisions that feel personal, but are often just the path of least resistance. In this way, the default bias doesn't just reflect human habits, it defines them. A man sits at his kitchen table scrolling through news on his phone. He stops on a headline that matches what he already believes about a political issue. He clicks, reads it twice, and nods with satisfaction. A few minutes later, he sees a different article with a headline that challenges his view. He skims the first paragraph, shakes his head, and closes it. He tells himself the writer is biased or misinformed. By the end of the morning, his original belief feels stronger than ever, even though he was exposed to both sides. What changed wasn't the truth, but how he filtered the information. This is confirmation bias, the tendency to seek, favor, and remember information that supports what we already believe, while ignoring or dismissing evidence that contradicts it. It happens quietly, almost invisibly. People think they are being logical, but their minds are subtly tilting the scales. Instead of examining all evidence equally, they give extra weight to what feels familiar and comfortable. Consider a manager hiring for a new role. They believe younger candidates are more tech-savvy. During interviews, they pay close attention when younger applicants talk about software skills, nodding and smiling. When older candidates mention similar skills, the manager listens less carefully or assumes they are exaggerating. At the end of the process, the manager feels certain their belief is correct. In reality, their perception shaped the evidence rather than the other way around. This bias plays out in relationships too. Imagine a person convinced that a friend is unreliable. Each time the friend is late, it confirms the belief. Those moments are noticed and remembered vividly. When the friend shows up on time or early, it's brushed aside or forgotten. Over weeks and months, the negative pattern seems undeniable, even though it's only part of the full picture. Confirmation bias thrives in groups. A sports fan surrounded by fellow fans hears constant agreement about which players are best and which referees are unfair. When an opposing fan shares a different view, the group rejects it instantly. Their shared belief grows stronger with every conversation, reinforced by the comfort of like-minded voices. The other side's perspective never has a chance to be heard fairly. Online spaces amplify this effect. Algorithms on social media platforms show people more of what they like and engage with. Someone who clicks on a few articles about a conspiracy theory soon sees a steady stream of similar content. Their feed becomes an echo chamber, reflecting back only what they already think. Over time, the belief hardens into certainty. Opposing information doesn't just seem wrong, it feels threatening. The danger of confirmation bias lies in how natural it feels. The brain craves patterns. It likes to feel right, to see the world as stable and predictable. Challenging beliefs creates discomfort, a feeling known as cognitive dissonance. To avoid that discomfort, the mind leans towards information that fits neatly with existing views. It's less stressful to stay inside familiar boundaries than to question them. Consider a scientist running an experiment. They have a hypothesis about the outcome. When reviewing data, they focus on results that match their expectations. Anomalies that don't fit are labeled as errors or dismissed as outliers. The final report seems solid, but it reflects the scientist's bias more than the reality of the experiment. Even in fields built on evidence, human perception can twist the process. In families, confirmation bias can fuel conflicts. A parent who believes their teenager is lazy notices every unwashed dish and unfinished chore. When the teen helps without being asked, the act barely registers. The parent's belief grows stronger, creating tension and resentment. The teenager, feeling unfairly judged, stops trying as hard, which then reinforces the parent's original view. A cycle forms, powered by selective attention. This pattern also appears in health decisions. A person convinced that a certain diet works for weight loss searches for articles that support it. They join online groups where others share success stories. When they encounter research showing mixed or negative results, they dismiss it as flawed. Their belief feels unshakable, but it's built on partial evidence. Investing provides another clear example. An investor who believes a particular company will succeed looks for news that supports that belief. Positive reports are shared and celebrated. Negative reports are ignored or explained away. Even as warning signs grow, the investor clings to their original position. By the time reality becomes impossible to ignore, losses have already piled up. Confirmation bias can affect entire communities. During a trial, jurors may enter the courtroom with initial impressions about guilt or innocence. Throughout the case, they notice and remember evidence that aligns with those impressions. Contradictory details fade from memory. By the time they deliberate, their positions feel well-reasoned, but they were shaped by selective attention from the start. Even casual conversations reveal this bias. Two friends debate whether a movie is good or bad. One loved it, the other hated it. As they talk, each recalls scenes that support their opinion. Neither mentions the moments that don't fit. By the end, both feel even more certain they were right all along. A workplace story shows how this can shape decisions subtly. A team launches a new product. The leader strongly believes it will succeed. Early feedback is mixed, but the leader highlights every positive review in meetings while downplaying the negatives. The team focuses on the good news, convinced they're on the right track. When sales eventually falter, the failure feels sudden and surprising, even though the warning signs were there all along. Breaking free from confirmation bias takes deliberate effort. It requires slowing down and asking uncomfortable questions. Am I seeking the full picture or just the parts I want to see? Am I open to being wrong? These questions are difficult because they challenge the mind's natural desire for certainty. A detective once shared a story about a case involving two suspects. From the start, everyone on the team believed one suspect was guilty. Evidence pointing to the other suspect was repeatedly overlooked. The detective forced the team to review every detail as if they were defending the other suspect. This shift revealed gaps in their assumptions and ultimately solved the case. Without that conscious effort, their initial belief might have led to a wrongful conviction. In everyday life, small acts of awareness help. When reading news, noticing the impulse to dismiss certain sources is a sign of bias at work. When arguing with a friend, listening carefully to their points instead of planning a rebuttal can reveal hidden truths. These habits don't erase bias, but they weaken its grip. Confirmation bias isn't about intelligence or education. Even the most thoughtful person is vulnerable. A doctor might ignore symptoms that don't fit their first diagnosis. A teacher might favor a student they believe to be gifted while overlooking another's quiet progress. A judge might lean toward a ruling that aligns with their values rather than the evidence. The bias hides in the background, shaping choices and conversations. It works silently, feeding certainty while narrowing vision. By seeking only what feels comfortable, people miss what is real. Like a spotlight aimed at one corner of a room, it leaves the rest in darkness. Even as it convinces them they're seeing the whole picture. A man sits at his kitchen table, staring at two envelopes. In one, there's a letter saying he's been given a bonus of $500. In the other, there's a letter saying he's been fined $500. Even though the amounts are the same, his reactions are completely different. The bonus brings a brief moment of happiness, a small lift to his mood. The fine, however, hits hard. His stomach twists and he can't stop thinking about it. By the end of the day, the joy from the bonus has faded, but the pain of the fine lingers. This is loss aversion. People feel the pain of losing something more strongly than the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. A gain might bring satisfaction, but a loss leaves a deeper mark. It's why people cling tightly to what they already have, even when better opportunities wait just beyond their grasp. Consider a child with a toy. Another toy, just as fun, sits nearby. If the child is given the second toy, they may smile for a moment. But if someone takes the first toy away, tears flow instantly. The reaction isn't balanced because the loss feels larger than the gain, even though both toys have the same worth. This same principle shapes adult decisions. Imagine a homeowner considering whether to sell their house. A buyer offers a fair price, but the homeowner focuses on what they'll be giving up: familiar rooms, memories, and a sense of stability. The possibility of a new home and new experiences feels less powerful than the fear of losing what's already theirs. Even when the numbers make sense, the emotional weight of loss tips the scale. Investing provides a clear example. An investor buys shares in a company, watching the price rise and fall. When the value goes up, there's a sense of quiet satisfaction. When the value drops by the same amount, panic sets in. The fear of losing money leads many investors to sell too quickly or hold on too long, making decisions that hurt them in the long run. The numbers may balance on paper, but in the mind, losses loom far larger. Marketers understand this instinct well. A subscription service might send an email saying, "Don't lose your benefits, renew today." The message frames inaction as a loss rather than simply offering renewal as a gain. The fear of losing something already owned pushes people to act faster than the promise of gaining something new. Even small situations reveal this pattern. Two coworkers are offered a choice. One is told they can receive a free lunch voucher if they complete a survey. The other is told they already have a voucher, but it will be taken away if they don't complete the survey. The second coworker is more likely to take action. The threat of loss motivates more strongly than the hope of gain, even though the end result is identical. Loss aversion also shapes relationships. In a friendship, someone might stay in a toxic dynamic because leaving feels like giving up years of shared history. The idea of losing the connection outweighs the possibility of finding a healthier bond. The same dynamic appears in romantic relationships, where people sometimes remain in unhappy partnerships because the fear of loss is too strong to overcome. Sports provide vivid examples. A team leading a game by a small margin often changes its strategy, playing more cautiously to avoid losing rather than boldly trying to win by a larger margin. The players focus on protecting what they have rather than pursuing greater success. This shift in mindset sometimes causes them to lose anyway. A fear of loss slows them down, making mistakes more likely. Loss aversion even influences how people value their time. Imagine a worker offered two scenarios. In one, they can gain an extra hour of free time if they finish a project early. In the other, they'll lose an hour of free time if they miss a deadline. The second scenario creates more urgency. The potential loss feels heavier than the potential gain, even though both involve the same amount of time. This principle often appears in auctions. Bidders continue raising their offers, not only because they want the item, but because dropping out feels like a loss. The higher the bids climb, the more determined they become to avoid the pain of losing. By the end, they may pay far more than the item is worth, driven by emotion rather than logic. A study once illustrated this with coffee mugs. Participants were given identical mugs. Later, they were offered a chance to trade for other items of equal value. Most refused. Once people owned the mugs, the thought of giving them up felt like a loss, even though they hadn't cared about them before. Ownership alone was enough to trigger loss aversion. In the workplace, leaders must account for this bias when implementing change. Employees often resist new systems or policies, not because the new way is worse, but because it requires letting go of the familiar. The fear of losing old routines overshadows the potential benefits of improvement. Successful leaders acknowledge this fear and guide people through it rather than dismissing it. Loss aversion can also appear in education. A teacher might frame a message to students by saying if you miss this assignment, you'll lose points, instead of if you complete this assignment, you'll gain points. The first approach tends to get a stronger response. Students work harder to avoid losing something than to earn the same reward. Even in daily spending, the effect is clear. A shopper considering a purchase might hesitate to spend $50. Yet if they are about to lose a coupon worth $50, they rush to use it. The value is identical, but one scenario feels like losing money, while the other feels like spending it. Loss aversion explains why people hold on to clutter. A person cleaning out a closet picks up an old sweater they haven't worn in years. Logic says to donate it, but the thought of parting with it feels like giving something up. Even if they don't like the sweater, the loss feels real. As a result, it goes back into the closet. Gamblers experience this bias intensely. A person who wins $50 in a game may feel pleased for a short while. If they lose $50 later, the pain overshadows the earlier happiness. This drives them to keep playing, desperate to recover the loss, often leading to even bigger losses. A workplace scenario captures how this bias shapes choices. A company announces a new bonus system. Instead of promising extra pay for high performance, they give employees a bonus at the start of the year and warn that it will be taken back if goals aren't met. Employees work harder under this system because the threat of losing money already in their hands feels stronger than the idea of earning it later. Families make decisions this way too. A couple might stay in a house that no longer suits them because selling feels like losing the home they built together. Even if a new house would bring comfort and space, the emotional weight of leaving behind memories is hard to bear. Loss aversion can freeze progress. A business leader might refuse to end a failing project because of the resources already invested. Closing it feels like admitting defeat, like losing time and money. Instead, they keep pouring effort into it, hoping to avoid the pain of loss, even as the situation worsens. People often describe these moments as gut feelings. The gut reacts more strongly to potential loss than to potential gain. This instinct helped ancestors survive when resources were scarce. Losing food or shelter could mean death, while gaining extra supplies was simply a bonus. Today, the stakes are different, but the wiring remains the same. The fear of loss shapes choices quietly, guiding decisions from the background. It can lead to caution that protects people from harm, but it can also trap them in situations they should leave behind. A gain may whisper, but a loss shouts, and the louder voice often wins. A man stands at the counter of a movie theater, staring at 3 popcorn sizes. The small is $4, the large is $7. The medium sits in between at $6.50. At first glance, the medium seems pointless. It's almost the same price as the large, yet offers much less popcorn. Without realizing it, the man's decision has been guided. He chooses the large, feeling like he's getting a great deal. If the medium hadn't been there, he might have chosen the small. The medium never needed to sell. Its purpose was to make the large look irresistible. This is the decoy effect. When people face a decision between 2 options, adding a third, less attractive option can push them toward the choice you prefer. The decoy changes how the brain frames value. It doesn't need to be appealing on its own. It only needs to make one of the other options seem like a clear winner. Consider a coffee shop menu. A small coffee costs $2. A large coffee costs $5. Most customers pick the small, thinking the large is too expensive. The shop introduces a medium coffee for $4.50. Now the large looks like a better deal. For just 50 cents more, customers get much more coffee. The medium isn't meant to sell in high numbers. It exists to steer customers toward the large without making them feel pressured. This effect works because people rarely judge value in absolute terms. They compare items to each other, looking for context. When 2 choices feel equal, it's hard to decide. The brain searches for patterns, for something that makes one stand out. The decoy provides that pattern. It creates a clear hierarchy. 1 bad option, 1 good option, and 1 that feels just right. Imagine a gym trying to sell memberships. They offer a basic plan with limited access for $20 a month. They offer a premium plan with full access, classes, and perks for $50. At first, most people choose the basic plan because $50 feels too high. The gym adds a third plan for $45 that includes some but not all of the perks. Suddenly, the premium plan looks like a bargain. Most customers now choose the $50 plan. The middle plan acts as a decoy, shifting perception without changing the actual value of the top tier. The same principle appears in technology sales. A company releases two versions of a tablet. The first has minimal storage and basic features for $200. The second has more storage and advanced features for $400. Many customers choose the cheaper model. Then the company adds a third version priced at $380. It has fewer features than the top model, but costs almost the same. The expensive version now looks like a smarter buy. The Decoy model isn't expected to sell well, but it makes the top choice feel like the best deal. Even restaurants use this technique in subtle ways. A menu might list 3 steaks. The cheapest costs $20, the middle one $30, and the most expensive $50. Few people buy the $50 steak. Its role is to make the $30 steak seem reasonable by comparison. Without the $50 option, $30 might feel expensive. With it, $30 feels like the safe, smart choice. The Decoy Effect doesn't always involve money. It can influence decisions about time, effort, or status. Imagine a volunteer organization recruiting people. One role requires a small time commitment and limited responsibility. Another role requires a huge commitment and lots of responsibility. Many potential volunteers choose the smaller role. The organization adds a third role that demands almost as much time as the largest role, but offers little recognition or reward. The middle role now feels like a poor deal. Some people upgrade to the most demanding role because it appears to give the most value for the effort. A story about magazine subscriptions illustrates this effect perfectly. A publisher offers 2 options: a digital-only subscription for $50 and a print-only subscription for $100. Most people choose the cheaper digital version. Then the publisher adds a third option, both print and digital, for $100. Almost everyone now chooses the combined version. The print-only version never sells well, but it makes the combined version look like a clear winner. Without the Decoy, many would have stuck with the cheaper option. This principle often shapes group decisions. A team debating 2 strategies might be evenly split. Someone introduces a third strategy that's weaker or less practical. Even though no one chooses it, it changes how the original 2 are viewed. The stronger of the first 2 now gains more support because it looks better by comparison. The Decoy doesn't need to win. It only needs to tilt the balance. Online platforms use this effect to guide user behavior. A streaming service might offer 3 subscription levels. The lowest tier has ads and basic features. The highest tier is expensive but packed with perks. The middle tier is priced just below the top tier but lacks key benefits. Most users end up choosing the top tier, even if they originally planned to spend less. The middle tier's presence pushes them upward without direct persuasion. Retail stores often arrange products to create this effect visually. A display might feature 3 similar items side by side. The leftmost item is low quality but cheap. The rightmost item is high quality but expensive. The center item is slightly less expensive than the rightmost one, but clearly worse. Shoppers tend to pick the rightmost option, feeling they've made a smart, rational choice. In reality, the store designed the layout to guide them there. This effect relies on perception rather than actual value. The Decoy doesn't need to be bad, it just needs to be less appealing than the target option. The brain works through comparison, not through pure logic. When one option clearly dominates another, it feels safe to choose it. A vacation package shows how this works in travel. A travel site offers 2 options, a 3-day trip for $300 and a 5-day trip for $500. Many people choose the cheaper trip. Then a third option appears, a 4-day trip for $480. It offers fewer perks than the 5-day trip, but costs almost the same. Suddenly, the 5-day trip feels like the smartest choice. The 4-day trip is rarely purchased, but it pushes buyers toward the higher price point. Even relationships can reflect this principle. A person considering 2 romantic partners might feel unsure. Then a third person enters the picture, sharing some traits with one of the first 2, but lacking in other areas. The original partner now seems more attractive by comparison, even though nothing about them has changed. The decoy effect also explains certain political strategies. A candidate may introduce a policy proposal they don't expect to pass. Its role is to make their preferred proposal seem moderate and reasonable by comparison. Voters see the extreme proposal as unappealing and gravitate toward the middle ground, even if they wouldn't have supported it on its own. In workplaces, managers use this effect when presenting plans. If they want the team to choose a specific project, they include another proposal that's similar but clearly weaker. Team members compare the two and feel confident choosing the stronger one. The weaker proposal serves its purpose by making the desired choice shine. This effect can be seen at fundraising events too. A charity might suggest 3 donation levels. The lowest is modest, the highest very large. The middle level is close to the highest, but offers fewer benefits. Most donors choose the top level because it feels like a better deal. The middle level, though rarely selected, guides them there. The decoy effect is subtle because people rarely notice it happening. They believe they are making independent, rational decisions. In reality, their choices are shaped by the way options are framed. A third, less appealing option tilts perception, quietly nudging them toward the choice someone else wanted all along. A doctor stands before a group of patients explaining a new treatment. She says, "This procedure has a 90% success rate." Faces in the room relax. People nod. Some even smile with relief. In another room, a different doctor describes the exact same procedure to a different group. He says, "This procedure has a 10% failure rate." The reaction is completely different. Patients shift uncomfortably in their chairs. A few whisper to each other, and one frowns deeply. Both statements describe the same numbers, yet the words change how people feel. This is framing. The way information is presented affects how it is understood and acted upon. People don't just respond to facts. They respond to the story around the facts. A single detail framed positively can inspire confidence, while the same detail framed negatively can create fear or doubt. The content stays the same, but perception shifts entirely. Consider a grocery store sign. It says, 95% fat-free on a package of ground beef. Shoppers see it and think of health and lean protein. Now imagine the same package labeled, contains 5% fat. Technically, the numbers match, but the second label feels heavier and less appealing. Most people reach for the first package without realizing why. Framing influences financial decisions too. A bank offers a savings plan. The advertisement says, "Earn $5 for every 100 you save." Many customers find that appealing. If the same ad instead said, "Lose $5 in interest for every 100 you don't save," the message would feel urgent and stressful. The difference lies not in the math, but in how the choice is positioned. Parents use framing when guiding children. A child who refuses to eat vegetables might respond better to, "If you eat your broccoli, you'll grow strong and fast," rather than, "If you don't eat your broccoli, you'll stay weak." Both sentences aim for the same outcome, but one frames the behavior as a reward, while the other frames it as a threat. Children, like adults, react differently based on which frame they hear. Framing even affects how teams work. Imagine a manager addressing a department after a tough quarter. If the manager says, "We missed our goals by 10%, the focus turns to failure. Morale drops, and the team grows defensive. If the manager instead says, "We achieved 90% of our target despite the challenges," the team feels motivated. The numbers are identical, but the emotional impact changes how people approach the next quarter. This effect plays out in negotiations. A real estate agent shows a couple 2 houses. For the first house, she says, "You'll save $20,000 compared to similar homes." For the second, she says, "If you don't buy soon, you could lose $20,000 in rising prices." The couple feels more pressure about the second house. Losses feel sharper than gains, and framing determines which side of that balance they see. Medical decisions highlight the stakes of framing. A patient facing surgery might hear 9 out of 10 people survive this operation. That framing encourages hope and trust. If they hear instead, 1 out of 10 people die from this operation, fear takes over. Some patients even decline life-saving treatment based on how the information is presented. Doctors are trained to choose their words carefully, knowing that framing can shape life or death decisions. This principle appears in advertising constantly. A skin cream might be sold as reducing wrinkles by 20%. Another might say, prevents 80% of wrinkles. Both claims describe the same result, yet the first feels like repair, while the second feels like prevention. Companies test which frame appeals more to their audience, often without customers realizing the manipulation. Politics relies heavily on framing. A tax plan could be described as relief for hardworking families or a burden on small businesses. A war could be framed as defending freedom or invading another nation. Each version shapes public opinion before the facts are even discussed. The initial frame creates a lens through which all later information is filtered. Even casual conversations reveal framing's power. 2 friends discuss a new restaurant. One says, "It's usually full of energy and excitement." The other says, "It's always loud and crowded." They are describing the same atmosphere, but one frame makes it sound appealing, while the other makes it sound unpleasant. The listener's impression depends entirely on which version they hear first. Framing also affects personal decisions. A person considering a new job offer might think, "I'll be gaining valuable experience and higher pay." That frame makes the move feel positive. If they instead focus on, "I'll be leaving behind a stable position and close coworkers," the frame shifts toward loss. The facts are the same, but the way they are highlighted changes how the decision feels. A restaurant menu provides another example. A dish described as 90% lean beef sounds healthy and appealing. If the same menu described it as 10% fat beef, diners would likely avoid it. This is why menus often use descriptive language that frames dishes in the best possible light, even when the ingredients are identical. In workplaces, framing can calm tensions or escalate them. Imagine a supervisor giving feedback. If they say, "Your report contains several mistakes," the employee feels defensive. If they say, "Your report is strong, and fixing a few areas will make it even better," the employee feels motivated to improve. The difference is not in the facts, but in how those facts are presented. A famous psychology experiment demonstrated this effect with a simple scenario. Participants were told about a disease outbreak. In one version, a proposed treatment was described as saving 200 lives out of 600. In another version, the same treatment was described as resulting in 400 deaths out of 600. Although the numbers were identical, most participants favored the lives saved version. When framed around survival, the decision felt positive. When framed around death, it felt negative. Retailers exploit framing during sales events. A sign reading, "Buy one, get one free," feels like a gain. A sign reading, "2 for the price of 1, is mathematically the same, but feels less exciting. Customers respond more eagerly to the first frame because it emphasizes receiving rather than paying. Even small choices can be shaped this way. A teacher handing back exams might say, "Most of you scored above 80%, creating a frame of success." If the teacher instead says, "A few of you scored below 20%, the mood in the room shifts to failure. The student's actual performance hasn't changed, only their perception of it. Framing works because humans rely on context to make sense of information. The brain doesn't process numbers or facts in isolation. It looks for patterns and meaning. The first way a fact is presented often becomes the default interpretation, influencing every thought that follows. A doctor discussing a treatment plan with a patient must be careful with framing. Saying, "This treatment gives you a 70% chance of improvement," encourages action. Saying, "There's a 30% chance it won't work," may cause hesitation. The data is the same, but the emotional response is very different. Even storytelling itself depends on framing. A novel might open with a character's struggle, framing them as a hero overcoming obstacles. The same events, framed differently, could make the character seem selfish or destructive. Readers respond to the frame as much as to the plot. Framing is everywhere, from billboards to boardrooms to dinner table conversations. A single word can tilt a decision. A small shift in emphasis can turn fear into hope or excitement into doubt. The facts remain steady, but the frame determines how they are seen, felt, and remembered. A crowded hall falls silent as a speaker steps onto the stage. She greets the audience, then begins her story. Her voice is steady, her words clear. Midway through a sentence, she stops. The pause stretches for 3 full seconds. In those 3 seconds, every person leans forward, holding their breath. When she speaks again, her next words land with a weight that lingers. The pause didn't just fill space, it amplified the message. A pause can change the rhythm of a conversation or speech. When used well, it creates focus. It gives listeners time to absorb what was said, to let the idea settle before moving on. Without a pause, words rush together, and even strong points get lost in the flow. The mind needs space to process meaning, and silence provides that space. Consider a courtroom scene. A lawyer presents closing arguments to the jury. She lays out the evidence step by step, building tension. When she reaches the critical moment, she stops speaking. The room holds still. In that quiet, jurors replay the evidence in their minds. Then the lawyer delivers a final line that strikes deep. If she had spoken without pause, the impact would have been lessened. The silence wasn't empty, it was part of the argument. In everyday conversations, pauses have power too. Imagine 2 friends talking about a painful experience. One says, "I felt betrayed." If they rush into the next sentence, the depth of that feeling might be missed. But if they pause, the weight of the word betrayed hangs in the air. The listener senses its full meaning. That moment of silence says more than any extra words could. Teachers use pauses to guide attention. In a busy classroom, a teacher might call for quiet and then stop speaking entirely. The silence spreads, drawing students' focus without a single command. Once the room is still, the teacher begins again. The pause acts as a signal, sharper than raised voices or repeated instructions. Actors understand this instinctively. In theater, a pause can show fear, doubt, or triumph. A line delivered too quickly might be forgotten, but a line followed by silence stays with the audience. The space between words becomes part of the performance, shaping how the story feels. Negotiations often turn on moments of silence. Picture 2 business leaders discussing a deal. One makes an offer, then falls silent. The other grows uneasy, filling the quiet with words. In that space, they reveal doubts or give away information unintentionally. The pause becomes a tool of strategy, letting silence do the work of persuasion. Parents discover the power of pause when speaking to children. A parent telling a child to stop misbehaving might say that's not okay. If they pause afterward, the message sinks in. If they keep talking, the child may tune out the words. The brief silence shows seriousness without anger, giving the child time to reflect. Public speakers often fear silence. They worry that a pause will seem like a mistake, so they fill every moment with words or filler sounds. In doing so, they weaken their message. A deliberate pause, however, feels confident. It signals control. The speaker owns the space, guiding the audience's attention with precision. A story from a corporate meeting shows this clearly. A manager presented quarterly results to the leadership team. The numbers were disappointing, and the room was tense. Instead of rushing through explanations, the manager presented the figures, then paused. The silence gave everyone a chance to absorb the reality. When the manager finally spoke again, the tone of the conversation shifted. Solutions were discussed calmly, without panic. The pause set the stage for clear thinking. Pauses also allow emotions to surface. In a hospital, a doctor delivers difficult news to a family. After speaking, the doctor remains silent. The family members process the words, their reactions unfolding naturally. If the doctor had continued talking, those feelings might have been buried or rushed past. The pause gives space for humanity. Even in casual interactions, silence can show respect. During a heartfelt conversation, one friend shares something vulnerable. The other listens and stays quiet for a moment before responding. That brief pause says, "I hear you. I'm letting your words matter." The absence of sound becomes an act of care. A pause can also create anticipation. In storytelling, suspense builds when the teller stops at a critical point. A grandparent telling a bedtime story might describe the hero approaching a dark cave, then pause. The child leans closer, eyes wide, waiting. When the story resumes, the excitement doubles. The pause turned curiosity into engagement. In job interviews, silence can work in subtle ways. An interviewer asks a difficult question and then waits quietly. Many candidates rush to fill the silence, speaking quickly and revealing more than they intended. A calm candidate who matches the pause with a thoughtful response stands out. The ability to sit comfortably in silence shows confidence. Cultural differences shape how pauses are understood. In some cultures, silence is seen as respectful and thoughtful. In others, it may feel awkward or uncomfortable. Skilled communicators learn to read these cues, adjusting their timing based on the situation. A pause that builds trust in one setting might cause tension in another. In leadership, timing matters as much as words. A leader addressing a crisis must choose moments of silence carefully. Too much talking can create confusion or fear. A well-placed pause shows strength. It tells the team, "I am thinking, I am listening." That steady presence calms the group more than constant explanations ever could. Musicians use silence the same way. A rest in a piece of music heightens the notes around it. The audience leans into the quiet, feeling the shape of the melody more deeply. Speech follows similar patterns. Without pauses, words blur together like endless noise. With pauses, they form rhythm and meaning. A customer service scenario shows this in action. A customer calls to complain angrily about a problem. The representative listens, and after the customer finishes speaking, stays silent for a moment. The customer, expecting interruption, begins to calm down. The pause signals patience and respect. When the representative finally responds, the conversation is more productive. Pauses even influence how decisions are made. During a tense negotiation, one side might announce their terms and then stop talking. The silence puts pressure on the other side to respond. Many people rush to fill the gap, often reviewing concessions or making quick decisions they later regret. The one who controls the silence often controls the outcome. Writers understand this instinctively. A sentence followed by a line break creates a pause on the page. Readers feel the space, even though it's visual rather than auditory. The same principle applies in speech. The ear needs time to rest, just as the eye does. In group discussions, Pauses help prevent chaos. Without them, voices overlap and ideas collide. A well-timed silence opens a path for someone quieter to speak. It shows that listening matters as much as talking. Even humor relies on timing. A joke told too quickly falls flat. A joke told with a pause before the punchline lands with impact. Comedians master this skill through practice, learning exactly how long to wait before delivering the final word. Silence has texture. It can feel heavy with sadness, light with anticipation, or sharp with tension. A skilled communicator senses these textures and uses them intentionally. The pause is never empty. It carries the weight of everything said before and everything yet to come. The power of pause lies in what it creates: space for thought, space for feeling, and space for meaning. Words matter, but so does the quiet between them. In that quiet, understanding deepens and connection grows stronger.